Hydrofield cuts through my neighborhood.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Lucky.
I'm the disembodied voice. That's me.
Yep. Steve's over there. We have Leo right here.
And a very special guest.
Yes, she's not on the screen, though, right now.
Okay, well, you got to do that.
We have Sarah with us tonight. I'm so excited that she's here. Please, guys, give her a warm welcome. I'm saying it backwards. Maybe it's because I've done 4 shows in a row. I don't know.
Happy, really? That's a lot.
There you are.
Here I am.
Oh my gosh. It's so great to have you here. I'm so excited. I know I had to kind of coerce you a little bit and be like, come on, it's fine. I promise. It will be a good time. So we met on Twitter and in Spaces. Yep. And you always just have so much interesting stuff to say, when it comes to your family background and you're a musician, and I just think you're so interesting, and I want to share, I wanted to give you a platform where you can really we can really just dive into stuff, because it's hard sometimes when we're on Twitter Spaces to really to really get into whatever we're talking about. So this will give us the opportunity to really just have a conversation, and I'm really excited. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we can see where we go from there?
I'm a singer-songwriter. I was born in London in the UK, and then when I was 11, my parents moved to Ireland, moved us to Ireland. So I was in Ireland from I was 11 until I was 20. And then when I was 20, I did a crazy thing, and I moved to the United States with $200 in a backpack.
That's so amazing. Wow.
Yeah, and I've been here ever since. So I've lived in Chicago, lived in Florida, and now I live in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., which is the worst place I've ever lived in my entire life.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I can imagine.
When I was in my so when I came here, I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I did. I started law school, and then I was in a boating accident. And I had been singing from I was a little kid with my dad, and then I'd been fronting my first cover band when I was 15 in Ireland. But my daddy died when I was 15, so I haven't really done an awful lot of music. I mean, music is a hard thing to get away from when it's in your heart and soul, I think. So I was in law school, and I was in a boating accident, and I was paralyzed on one side. I was actually in a coma for 3 weeks, and I was paralyzed on one side, and I had to go through rehab. And after that, I just didn't want to go back to law school. I wanted to pursue singing. So I started singing professionally as a backing vocalist and went on tour with some famous people, Steve Winwood, and then Don Henley, and then Bryan Adams, and then a little leg of a tour with Kenny Loggins. So I was with 4 big celebrities.
That's amazing.
That's very cool.
And the road is tough, it's hell. And especially as a girl, you're in a bus with all these guys, and they're disgusting. So I really kind of wanted to come off the road and get a real job again. I hadn't made it. I've been trying to make it as a singer in my own right, and everybody said, no, there's already one Stevie Nicks, we don't need another one, and you sound like her and you look like her. So because I definitely had I met the right people, but I just it's such a fluke to make it in music. So I actually went back to school, got an MBA, got a real job, and then I still was playing in bands, wedding bands, cover bands, the whole 9 yards. Like I said, you just can't leave music behind when it's in your blood, Steve. You know that. And then um, I married somebody who was abusive, unfortunately, and he told me I couldn't sing anymore, and he wouldn't let me sing, and he told me I sounded horrible. And I still sang when he wasn't around, you know, I still did my vocal exercises, my scales and everything else. Um, and my marriage was really, really bad. I was, you know, completely oppressed by him for years where I couldn't even leave the house. Um, and so finally he tried to kill me, and I got away from him at that point, had him arrested. And then I moved here and went through a really hellish divorce. And when it was all said and done, I said, I want to sing again. So I started singing in cover bands, and I was doing that for a few years. And then I lost my job in 20, what year was that? 2 years ago, so 2021. And I decided, I kept looking for a job and I couldn't get one. And I decided, you know, with all this COVID stuff and me not knowing what's going on, it's time for me to release all these songs I've written. So I just started releasing my songs about 15 months ago. And that kind of became very addictive to release my songs. And I've had, I think I hit 1.3 million streams today. So, you know, they're just streams on Spotify. It's a vanity metric, but it means somebody likes my music somewhere.
Hell yeah.
That's
One,
amazing.
yeah, one of
Like,
my songs was in a TV show, which is, you know, I'm really proud of that. I've charted on Shazam in Canada and the US, charted in Germany and Finland and Sweden. Um, yeah, so I'm kind of like psyched about it. I'm getting all these great reviews lately. This past week, it's been insane. With all these people saying I'm super talented. So, you know, when you're a musician, you sort of have this imposter syndrome where you just don't believe you're good, and you keep questioning yourself. So these reviews are making me go, well, I must be good.
yeah. Yeah, you're amazing. And I would think that probably some of the influence of having, you know, the domestic violence and stuff like that in your background, and hearing that over and over again, like sometimes like there's just like we replay these tapes of abuse, right? Like that's like we let them just keep going and going, and we have to stop them.
Yeah, they diminish your self-esteem. I personally have been playing music for about 3 decades, and I've listened to a bunch of your songs, and you are wildly talented. So don't ever doubt that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Steve was like, "Oh my gosh," I'm like, "I know," and I'm like, "And she's adorable, and she's little." What did you say, Steve?
What did I say?
You said she's like an elf, like.
Oh yeah,
person.
she's got elfin qualities. She's definitely, you know, that's a plus for a little blonde lady. I mean, come on, that's
yeah,
perfect.
like
I'm 4'11", yeah.
yeah, I know. That's why I'm like she's adorable. She's 4'11". Like you're shorter than me. Like I'm not much taller. But I'm
Definite
taller
Stevie
than
Nicks
you.
vibes. Definite Stevie Nicks vibes for sure. With
Yeah.
The stature and everything. You know, she's little bitty too.
Yeah, and of course I was actually in a Fleetwood Mac cover band, tribute band for a while.
Hell yeah, I bet you rock that.
That's so great.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to do it, you know. If you look like her and you sound like her, you might as well. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, you sound so much like her. You have a vibrato." So funny thing about that is, many years ago when I was auditioning for something or other, this producer said, "You know, you have Stevie Nicks' goat vibrato," and that is not a compliment. So I was like, "Yeah, I've got Stevie Nicks' goat vibrato."
That's funny.
Like, so what is your what has been like, you know, I don't know, like how did you how did you get over, like when you were in that, like, that domestic violence situation? Like, how did you eventually just like stop it? It was just like he tried to hurt you, and then that made you snap out of it.
I didn't see that he was violent for years. I used to call him John Jekyll and John Hyde because I never knew who was going to come through the door, Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And if I'd only Googled that, I probably would have got onto the fact that he was abusive, that he was a narcissist, and I didn't. Um, and I finally, like, he was physically abusive, but I didn't realize that it was physically abusive. Like, he pushed me, but he said I was clumsy, and so I thought, well, yeah, I'm clumsy. um or he did things like, we had all these cats because I think he thought I'd never leave him because of the cats. So when I wasn't allowed to go to the store, I wasn't allowed outside I wasn't even allowed to talk for more than 10 minutes a day. So when I'd have to put the cat food in the cupboard, I had to put it in a certain order, and he'd say I did it wrong, whether I did or not, and he'd throw all the cans out on top of my head. And that's physical abuse. Or like, he'd get me in a corner and he'd have one fist, against my head. That's physical abuse because it's threatening. He was 6'4",
Oh
and
gosh,
I'm
yeah.
4'11". But I didn't see it as physical abuse. I just, I didn't, nobody ever told me that that was physical abuse. And then one day, he got mad at me and he pushed me, and then he started kicking my knee. Whatever way I hit my knee was swelling up, and he started kicking my knee. And that's when something went off in my brain that this isn't right. And I had gotten in touch with an old friend of mine on Facebook who was working overnight in a VA hospital. And the only time I could talk to anybody was at night when my husband was asleep. So I called him, and he kind of heard something in my voice, and he kept saying to me, "You don't sound like you used to. You used to be full of confidence, and you've changed." And so I finally told him, and he said, "That's it. We're calling the domestic violence hotline right now, and I'm going to stay on the line with you." And I called, and I still was like, "Well, he just did this once." And they're like, "Really? Are you sure?" And they're like, "Are there any other incidents where he pushed you?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but I'm clumsy." And then I called like probably every 30 days, just trying to hear what different people had to say. Was he really abusive? And of course, then the abuse started to escalate, as it always does. And there was no way to deny it. At a certain point, it was really, really bad. And then I knew he was going to try to kill me. I just knew it. And he did, and that time he didn't actually hurt me, but he was going to, and he described to me what he was going to do. He had a big wine bottle, and he put on surgical gloves, and he was going to kill me. Um,
Oh my
and
gosh.
cut me up in pieces, and throw me into the ocean. And he was like, "I've got all this equipment that I bought," and he cleaned pools. I bought a pool business so he'd have a job. Um, and yeah, I mean, he was describing to me exactly what he was going to do, and he had my suitcase packed to say I was going to go. And I recorded it. I videotaped it as I'd been told to do by the domestic violence hotline. And he didn't see that I had my phone in my hand recording him. And then when he saw I had my phone, I had my phone programmed to one click call the police. And the police came in, and you know what? That was so scary because at first I didn't think they were going to arrest him. They put me in the kitchen with this really young cop, super young. Found out later he was like a week on the job or something. And they put the more experienced cop in the living room with my husband, and he was going, my husband was saying, yeah, that we're going through divorce. And this guy's like, "Oh yeah, that's really hard. I came back from the military and my wife wanted to divorce me, and it's tough." And I'm like, this is going nowhere. So I literally got it with the young cop, and I mean, it was my last chance. I got in his face with my phone, and I said, "Watch this video, watch this video." And he pulled a gun to my head. It was so scary. And I'm like, "No, you have to watch this video." And I hit play, and he saw something on it, and he called the sergeant. And luckily for me, because I was living in Florida, and this was actually the worst county in Florida for domestic violence. It was so bad they were going to take it away from the local police department and give it to the county because women were dying left, right, and center or being like horrendously injured. And you know, everybody had told me that in the domestic violence hotline. They're like, "You're in really real trouble. These cops are never going to do anything." But luckily, that sergeant had just gone through retraining. And he got to my house and he looked at me and he said, "You're so calm, ma'am. You've been going through this for a long time." And at that point, the floodgates opened. Like I just started bawling because it was like the first time somebody was standing there, you know, if you know what I mean, and acknowledging what I had been through. Um, so yeah. So at that point he was arrested and you know, I had to go get an order of protection um and then he wasn't able to come back to the house, but he was able to come in the housing development. Oh, it was just a night. It was an ongoing nightmare. Um, that I never thought I would get out of. But eventually I moved away, and then he fought me in the courts for 4 years to get my address here. Um, so I was the judge threw me out of my own divorce because I wouldn't give him my address, and I had to appeal that. It was, I mean, such a nightmare. Yeah.
It's awful going through that kind of thing. I've been through, you know, like my domestic violence issue that I went through wasn't as like severe as what you went through, but I know that like it's really hard to let go of the things that are instilled and repeated in your head over and over again. But you know what? You've broken that. Whatever that record was, that whatever that tape was, you stopped playing it because look at where you are now. You've released your music that he wasn't able to stop you from doing. Like that's huge. That's a huge accomplishment. And then you're getting all these great reviews on your music. I mean, holy shit, that's amazing. You deserve that. You deserve it, you know? And I think sometimes it's hard for us to accept that. You know, it's hard for us to accept like after getting beat down so much, then like accepting like the complete opposite of it. It almost feels like, you know, like, oh, uh you don't, you know what I mean, you don't always know what to do with it. So how are you like, how are you handling that with like, you know, things being so different now from then to now, and how is
It's
that?
been so long, you know, it's been 12 years since he was arrested, over 12 years. And I think, you know, you do put some of it behind you. I mean, I still get affected, like if I was in the bathroom earlier and I heard this man upstairs yelling at his children. I can't stand yelling, you know, so that still will affect me to some degree. But it's been so long. I don't put up with anybody's BS anymore. I'm really kind of hard in a way where I just have to walk away from people who are full of drama. And I see through people like I never used to. I was really naive. I think one of the hardest things to accept, and I remember saying this to it when I was in therapy after I moved here, um, you kind of have to accept that you're not going to be the person that you were. Like I really wanted to go back and be 33-year-old me when he came into my life. That's who I wanted to be. And I couldn't be that person anymore because I had changed. So I had to come to terms with I could be some part of that me and then be this newer version of me. And that was a really hard thing to accept, I think.
Like you had to like shed your old self and kind of like, you know, start from a different place. You know,
Yeah,
you're not the same as you were, but you're, you know, like in your core, you know, you're the same person. You just had different experiences that
right.
happened. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's an important thing, and I think that there's so many things that that aren't taught to us. You know what I mean? Like who wants to teach your daughter how to survive an abusive relationship? Or who wants to teach them how to survive an assault if you're assaulted or if you're beat up? But like maybe we should be talking about these things more. Maybe we should be
I think we
talking
should.
about like, because I think when it's out in the open and we openly discuss things and we, you know, we add that light to it, and we can talk about the things that, you know what I mean, that may have hurt us, or, you know, whatever happened, but also then talk about how we had a path after that and what we did after that, you know, because we can't always control what other people are going to do, you know, but we can choose how we react to what they've done. And so
I
let's,
think what should be taught to young girls is red flags. If they are too good to be true, they are. If they love bomb you, there's something up. If they're moving too fast, if there's too much pressure to move in, to spend time with them, if they're not encouraging you, because that's definitely what, I actually did a couple podcasts on this a couple years ago when Gabby Petito was murdered by her boyfriend. Um, and I really felt so strongly about it that people aren't taught. And the red flags, I mean, if they hit you at dinner after 2 weeks, you'd be done with them, you'd be gone. But that's not what they do. It's a very insidious, it starts off slowly. It's it's that time of the month and you've got a zit, and they see you coming out of the shower with this zit and you haven't put your makeup on to hide it yet, right? And then they take you out to dinner and they sit there and they stare at the zit the whole time. And you're like, but I've got makeup on, cover it up. So you run into the bathroom. And then it's like they say little things like, um, did you put on weight? Or did that outfit shrink in the wash? Like just to make you self-conscious. And then it
really,
was
it's
things,
really manipulative. Like it's
yeah,
really
and it's things
manipulative.
like, do you realize that you put away the silverware in your drawer wrong? Like you're supposed to have all the forks facing up. So what? And I've been put stuff in. It's just these little things, and they accumulate over time, and there's more and more of them, and you start to just feel self-conscious. Well, and then it's the isolating you from your friends, where they'll claim they're deathly ill. And you're supposed to go out with your friends, and it's like, but they're picking us up in 5 minutes. And it's like, oh, well, you go. And then you go and they blow up your phone. And
Mm.
then, you get home and they make you feel terribly guilty that you went. So you're not going to go the next time because you don't want to deal with that. Um, or they have a fight with your friend. And you're like, but what happened? And then they're like, oh, yeah, that friend is a terrible person. She's a bitch. You shouldn't hang out with her anymore. And it's like all these things that and it's so insidious. It's happening before you realize it.
Yeah, it's like it's little. It's like over time, it will be like, oh, well, that friend is such and such, and you know what I mean. They'll try to manipulate you, and then not hanging out with that particular friend, and then it's always like inch by inch, by little, and I think that's how. I mean, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you see the red flags because they're so big and red, like right away. You know what I mean? And those are the relationships that, like, you know, I think most of the time people walk away from. But other times it happens so little by little that sometimes you just don't realize it until you're invested in it. And then
But
you really love the person. And then you really, you know, so you have to like Oz was saying, you know, like don't associate with people who push your boundaries. Yeah.
yeah.
That's exactly what we need to
And
do.
there's a sort of an addiction to it. I mean, I hate to say this because I never want to make anybody feel guilty, but you go through this cycle, right? And so after they have yelled at you, they're incredibly wonderful and they're buying you flowers and they're love
The
bombing you or
honeymoon
whatever.
phase. The
Honeymoon phase.
honeymoon
And
phase.
then you go into this tension building phase where you're walking on eggshells and you want to get that. And after you've been through this a number of times, you want to get that phase over. Like I actually used to do things to get him angry at me,
On
to
purpose.
push that phase. And then you feel like it's your fault and you feel guilty. So then you get into the abuse phase, whether it's yelling or, later on physical abuse. But then you're so dying to get back to that honeymoon phase. You are actually addicted to it. And it took me a really long time to admit that to myself. And like one of my songs that I wrote is about my marriage, and I call it "Wasn't My Fault," because people say stuff to you like, I remember like calling for help, and after he was gone out of the house and I was there by myself and I don't drive, and people were saying, oh, you had a phone, a computer, an internet connection, and you didn't just walk out the door. It's like, yeah, I
It's
fucking walk
not
out.
that easy. It's really not.
I
I
even had a psychiatrist at one point say to me, what did you do that made him so angry that he's still stalking you and trying to get your address all these years later? Like, what did I do? He's crazy.
Are
You
you
know, so
kidding me? That's so
yeah.
wrong. Like that's not right. Yeah, I had an ex that would drive me around to like, what they considered to be like the not so good area, the not so good neighborhoods, and oh well, what are you gonna do? You gonna live here? Well, I mean, yeah, thanks for giving me the showing me around, like
Show me some options.
yeah, thank you for giving me options. But yeah, like I left an ex, and divorced, and I ended up going because I had my daughter. I went to a domestic violence shelter, and then I saw the women there abusing their children, like at the domestic violence shelter, and I'm just like, what is happening? Like, like sometimes people get, like they get stuck in that abuse mode, and it imprints and like gets, stuck on them. And so they were doing the same things that they said they claimed they were running away from. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is horrific. Like to see it happening to other, what I mean, to other women, and to being so vulnerable at the time. Like
Yeah.
it's just it's a really hard place to be, especially when you feel when you've been battered down with like somebody else doing all that emotional damage to you. Like it's very emotionally draining to have
Hmm.
somebody acting the way that they did, like you were saying that your ex-husband did. I mean, that's just, it's horrific. It's hard to live through, and then people want to judge you on whether
But
or not you left or not, or like, oh well, you could have, why didn't you do this? It's like, oh, it's, if it was so easy, then women wouldn't leave and then go back to their abuser, and leave and go back to their abuser. That is something that happens a lot, that women
because
go
it's
back to
hard.
their abuser.
It's been hard for me. I had a beautiful house that I bought. He got all that. He got everything. He got my business that I had worked all my, he got all my money, that I had made all my life. And I'd been a motivational speaker and an author. I'd had my own web development business. I'd made a lot of money, and it was all gone. He'd taken control of everything. So I lost everything. I bought a Corvette for him. Lost, that's gone. I mean, every single thing that I had, I left. I had luckily been smart enough to start transferring some money from my business account, not his, nothing to do with him, it was mine. But I had been transferring a little bit of money at a time, and I had $20,000. And that, you know, unfortunately, a lot of it went to a lawyer, but at least it was a way for me to move out of there and get away.
That's good
Um,
that you had that. I had
yeah.
nothing when I left.
Mm,
Nothing. I lived at a homeless shelter with my child. That was better than the situation that I was in. So like, it,
also.
and it's not easy to rebuild, rebuild a life after, and but yeah, I mean,
I always say to people too, like the most dangerous time is when you're talking about leaving, which I had told him like an idiot. I told him I was going to leave. And that's the most dangerous time. I mean, if I had it to do over, I would have just gone while he was at work.
I
I
left a
would have,
note. I left a note.
oh, I wouldn't
Yeah.
have even left a note. I would have just been gone like the wind. And that's what I was tell people, like you just got to cut them off. And that goes for any abusive person. Like I actually have a friend who was dealing with a crazy abusive person recently, not even in a romantic way. And I said, you just got to cut them off. There's no negotiation. There's no telling them. You just have to cut off abusive people and preferably block them. Because anybody who treats you, when it's obviously that somebody's taking advantage of you and treating you badly, you give them one chance and say, hey, this wasn't cool. But if they keep doing it, and especially if they yell and screaming at you, that's it. You just got to walk away. And I've become really hard like that. And that's what I started out with saying. I've become very, like, I don't, I used to give people 10,000 chances, and I don't anymore. You get one chance. That's it. I'm done. Do it again, I'm done.
Yeah, I think that that also comes with, you know, a lot of us just with like the experience and the age that, you know what I mean, like, you know,
Yeah.
like it's amazing. Steve and I were talking the other day. I was just like, yeah, like I don't have a filter for bullshit anymore. Like, and as I've gotten older, I have less of one.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, like just the truth just matters to me. And like, you know, I'm I'm just not about like, you know, embracing other people's like, you know, if they're in a delusional state or whatever. Like I can't. I don't have time for that. I really don't. I don't have the energy to put towards that, you know, and so it just I'm like, oh, you know what? It is what it is. Call me whatever you want. I am who I am. I'm fearlessly authentic. Like, you know, like that doesn't it doesn't matter like what else you call me because I know who I am. And I think that a lot of people, I feel like, especially like online right now, I think there's a lot of people that just don't have a core identity. Like they just, I don't know what it is that why they don't, but people are, I think, more thin skinned than I have ever seen. Like I grew up in like the 80s and 90s, like you had grit. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
you were tough. You had to be. You know, like I was. Oh my gosh! Like I can't
Well, you know what?
imagine.
I was listening to Buck Angel on one of his, I think it's in the space. I can't remember. It was maybe one of his lives the other day, and he was saying that his kid got this like really fancy new jacket, like some
Oh
expensive
yeah, I
jacket,
was watching that
and
with
he
you.
told him they were in the airport, and he said to make sure you don't leave your jacket behind. The kid left the jacket behind. They got on the plane, and he did ask the flight attendant, "Can we get off to go get the jacket?" And the flight attendant said no. And the kid was like, "Oh my God, I love that jacket." And he was like, "Well, tough. Now you're gonna have to save up your money to get another one." That is good parenting. I mean, today parents will go buy them another jacket. You know what? You don't learn from your mistakes. That kid will never leave a jacket anywhere. He will have it tied around his waist from now on because they'll learn. I mean, but that's how parents. That's how we used to be parented. You know, and we used to like when I was in school, I didn't have a good upbringing. You know some of that already. But you know, I was always in competitions for drama and poetry and singing. And you know what? I didn't always win. I wanted to win. I was very competitive, but I didn't always win. Sometimes I came in second or third. I was placed. But you learned. And it's like nowadays the kids there's no contest. They don't have to win. They just get a trophy
They get a
for
participation
competing.
trophy. Like it's like, oh, you participated. Here you go.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's like it doesn't bolster confidence. It doesn't make them want to work harder to earn the trophy. You know, like it was an earning thing. You earned that. You got
Yeah.
that grit because you know what? You fell down and you're like, shit. Well, I guess I better get back up and get back on that bike. You know what I mean? And we're not going to just get rid of it. You know what I mean? Like we're not going to give up. But
And
I feel
like
like that's not there
we
anymore.
were my dad was wealthy and had people to wash his car and people to mow the lawn. But you know what? If you wanted something, like if I said I want that new outfit in the store, can I have it? He'd go, sure. What are you willing to do for it? What do I have to do? Will you wash the car? Okay, Dad. But it's like, Dad, you have people to wash the car. He's like, well, I won't have the people wash the car this week. You'll do it. You know, and he died when I was 15, so I was, you know, early teenagers when this was going on. And the same thing, he'd say, well, you're mowing the lawn. Of course, if I didn't do it right, he wouldn't get mad at me. You know what I mean? But it was, he wanted me to realize that I could have anything in life I wanted. I just had to be willing to pay whatever the price was. And I really think that's smart because you have to, you know, it's always made me realize, well, if I want to get from here to here, what do I have to do? Like when I wanted to get my MBA, well, what do I have to do? I have to go to school to get it. You know, I can't just get it handed to me, you know. And so I think it's really important that that's how we raise our children. No, I don't have any children, but you know what I mean. We, the colloquial we, and
Well,
not just
yeah,
hand
like as
everything
a
to your partner.
society, you know what I mean? We should be encouraging that kind of, but I mean, I can't tell someone else how to raise their own child, you know what I mean? But like,
But a lot of people would
I'll
think that's
point it
cruel
out.
parenting. They think it's cruel. It's not cruel. It's not cruel. There's nothing cruel about saying no.
Yeah, no,
And
that's, you're not, I mean, like, I raised my daughter where, like, like I was her best friend, but I was always mom first. Like I was always mom. You know
right,
what I mean? Like we're really close. We, you know what I mean, and all that. But she always knew like my place was mom. I had final say in everything. But she could express why she felt whatever or what, you know what I mean? And I think that that's really important. It's important for them to know like that you have their back, but you're not going to have it when you're not supposed, like, you know what I mean? Like there should be some pushback when something's not right, or like they should be able to tell you how they feel about something and not be disrespectful, but like tell you how they feel about something. I was raised in that. I was upbringing of you're to be seen and not heard, you know. And if you stepped out of line, there was a thick belt that was coming your way, or you got your ass beat. Like it, and I didn't do that with my daughter. I chose to not, you know what I mean, not do that to her. But like there was a certain amount of like, you know, a hardness that I had, growing up, because I knew that like there would be a consequence if I stepped out of line
yep.
of my, of my stepdad. Like I knew, I knew, I I was fully aware
There
that
has to be. There has to be some kind of consequence. You can't. I mean, if you commit a crime, you get arrested, and the old saying, if you can't do the time, don't commit the crime. I mean, it's true. But there have to be some consequences. We have to have some law and order. And some people today, the kids of today, seem to think that we don't. Like defund the police. What do we need police for? Um, we need police. Trust me. When you've been a victim of a crime, you suddenly understand why you need police. So yeah, I mean, I just, and that doesn't mean that the police don't need some retraining. Maybe they do, especially in regards to
well,
domestic violence.
defund the police really, the way that they phrased that, I wish that they had phrased it more as refund the community, because basically what defund the police means is not to put so much funds towards just the police, but take some of that and use it towards social services, outreach
Right.
programs, helping your community. It's about redistributing the money instead of it all just going to police that are extremely militarized. And you know what I mean? Like if the police were actually
Or
there,
having like a social worker do a ride along, on a domestic
yeah,
violence
like we need to have
situation
funds
and give them advice. Yeah.
reallocated within our communities. So it's really focused back on like being a part of our community, as opposed to just giving the funding to one particular department of the community that then feel like they have like just all this power. You know what I mean?
But
And not every police station is like that, and not every like group of police officers are militarized. There are some in smaller towns, and I find like that. Like I've volunteered alongside a lot of like the local police in my town, because I've done a lot of volunteer work. I volunteered at the soup kitchen, not because it was like a lot of people do because it's like a community service thing. It wasn't an order thing. Like I did it because I wanted to work with the community, because me being a previously houseless person, that community, I know how fragile it is, and I know how easy it is for like something to happen to a family where suddenly that's where they are.
yeah,
And it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't. Someone can become sick in the family, and you suddenly don't have insurance, and you don't have the job, or something happens drastically. I mean, it can really happen to like anybody. Just the right circumstances can land you in that kind of situation. And so like to me, that the homeless community or the houseless community, like, I went back and worked at the shelter that I lived at, that I
Wonderful.
went to. Yeah. Well, not the domestic violence one that the women were abusing children, but this is the second shelter that I lived at for like 3 months with my daughter when she was little. And that's how I got back on my feet. So I eventually went back there to work there as, an actual employee. First I volunteered, and then I got a job there as an employee. And, I loved the work. I loved being able to help with the people like right within the community. And, like, it's really important to me. Like, if you want a better community, then you need to be in your community and be a part of it. And that's the way that we can move forward. Like, if we had more people doing volunteer work within our communities, imagine what we could get done together.
Right.
If it wasn't forced, but it was volunteer, and people, like, the culture of society shifted to where it is more about mutual aid, and it is more about helping each other, and, like, and building that trust and that environment. And I think that we would be better off as a society. I think right now we're just so individualistic, or very cluster groups. You know what I mean? Like, I only care about my friends and family, and that's it. And everyone else outside of that is just not. Like, we have like these very
We
like
don't take
cluster
care of
tribes.
each other anymore. Like I think people used to take care of one another and realize that,
Yeah, like
like,
the mom.
raising children takes a village. It's not.
Yeah,
And we just don't do that as much anymore. Like, I helped my best friend, God rest her soul now, but I helped her raise her two boys, and her parents were involved too, and her brothers were involved, and her sister was involved in. Um, it wasn't just her trying to do everything by herself. And I just don't see that anymore. Like, people don't get together. We're all so separate, and so we're like almost afraid of one another these days.
yeah. I mean, like, it used to be like, when a new mom had a baby or something, like, like, everyone potlucked and brought meals over or whatever. And I'm not really sure what happened that caused that shift, but, like, I know that that's how it was when I was growing up. I knew, like, the neighborhood moms, like, it's very different now. It's very disconnected. We're all very disconnected from each other.
Yeah. Do you think it's the internet that's done that to us, or?
I think it's a combination. I think it's probably the internet and just the constant
relentless indoctrination and programming since birth.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
And people are just desperate.
People are a lot more. It was interesting to me because, like, I was in this marriage for 13 years, and for at least 7 years of it, I really had the only contact with the outside world I had was, like, if we went to the vet. So I came out of this marriage in 2011, and it was, to me, it was like the world had changed, because that was a really long time, and things were just so different. And I was kind of shocked at, I think, even the selfishness of people. I was saying that recently, like, before all of this, I was on the internet. I was online since 1992, but we were on forums, and people used to have great discussions on forums, not fights and arguments and I'm gonna dox you and I'm gonna do this like people do now, and not just these relentless name calling that you see on social media, but actual discussion where people would agree to disagree. Not anymore.
I don't agree with anybody 100% of the time. I don't agree with Steve 100%.
Why would you want to?
I know. That would be a cult, right? Like, that would be a cult. That would be like, we're group thinking. Okay, that means we're in a cult. I don't want that. And some people, if you say something outside of like what they're used to in their echo chamber, suddenly that means that you're like, you're a right winger, or you're this, or you're a
Nazi.
Oh my gosh.
Opposite of whatever
it is that you are, you're the opposite of it. And
homophobe, transphobe. I mean, God, the names people call you. And it's like, I'm half Jewish, and somebody called me a Nazi the other day. I'm like, I'm half Jewish. And they were like, yeah, well, you shouldn't be acting like a Nazi. That because I disagree with, children getting on puberty blockers. I just fundamentally disagree with it.
Yeah.
And I think, I think my views are pretty consistent across the board. I don't agree with the death penalty because if one person is put to death that was innocent and we later found out they were innocent, we can't reverse it. Well, that's the way I feel about these kids. And I've had a lot of contact with a lot of detransitioners. And I went through a period of what they'd now call gender dysphoria myself when I was a teenager after sexual abuse, where I wanted to be a boy. So I understand it, and it was wrong. I just didn't want to be abused anymore. But I don't want one person to regret this. And somebody says, well, there'll probably always be somebody who regrets it. Yeah, but it's not reversible. The damage it has done is not reversible. So let's wait until they're adults and they can think. That's all I ask. I'm not transphobic. I have transsexual friends that I've known since I was a young child. A friend of mine went through transition in 1988. If anybody wants to call me a transphobe, they're nuts. I mean, I was with my friend now every step of the way. I'm not a transphobe, but I just leave the kids alone and let them grow up a little bit and let's see. Yeah, I'm not saying don't get them therapy, don't help them. Of course not. Get them therapy.
Yeah.
But they don't need to be started on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgery. And then people say, well, the surgery isn't happening. Do you want me to give you case after case after case of
I mean, it
teenagers?
publicly happened on national television.
That's right,
Jazz
yeah.
Jennings, like it is the most like prominent case of it happening. And then I went over Prisha's her case and read all of her like the court documents and the manipulation that those doctors did. They targeted her and they pushed her through this like and then they benefited from it afterwards and all got certified as like the W path. Like it's like, oh my gosh,
and she's not the only one. There's Layla Jane, there's Chloe Cole. This other one has filed a lawsuit now too. So
yeah.
And they're coming out of the woodwork. I think we're at the tip of the iceberg, and I think it's just going to keep happening.
And Prisha's like it started in like 2015. So like we have to remember that there is a time period from when it started into now, and so there's gonna. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of lawsuits.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I think
when you're
what is going to happen when the 6-year-olds and the 8-year-olds that are just going on puberty blockers now? I guess I don't think they're putting 6-year-olds on it, but they are putting some 8-year-olds on puberty blockers. What's going to happen when those 8-year-olds that they're putting on this year on puberty blockers? What's going to happen when they grow up? And what if they decide that this was the wrong move for them? Because I do not believe at 8 that you can decide. I mean, at 8, I wanted to be on Venus, and then I wanted to be an actress, and then I wanted to be a firefighter. I mean, and then I wanted to be a princess. I'm still mad at my parents that they didn't affirm my princess desires. I mean, and you've got a daughter. You know what it's like. I mean, you change your mind every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that you can only in hindsight see that you had a child that had gender dysphoria because they need to go through puberty to establish that they have gender dysphoria. And for most kids, they've done studies on this. They see that most kids that go through puberty, that puberty is the answer for the gender dysphoria.
Yeah,
and so
a lot of them.
Yeah,
and I've seen statistics anywhere from 65 all the way up to 80% grow out, and so it's somewhere in that range. That's a lot, though. That's the majority of them that grow out of it, and some of them are gay.
So, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like we had Xlanstic on last night, and she was saying how she's a clinician, and so she's like,
she's fantastic.
Oh my gosh, amazing! We had so much fun.
I gotta watch that one. Yeah, she can cite statistics that you love, right, Sana?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, and she's really into it, in it because she's a clinician. So like she has that information, that background, and she can pronounce things that I'll never be able to pronounce properly, because my dyslexia comes out of my mouth that way sometimes too. Like I just like cannot say things right way. But yeah, she was saying that even like the the puberty blockers and the hormones, like it actually shrinks your brain. Like it physically shrinks your brain from being like, what was it, Steve, 3 pounds to like 1.5 or something, like half
like
the
50%
size
almost. Yeah.
and that also causes dementia. That's what causes dementia. So I mean, I'm really, really concerned about how short it's going to cause these lives to be. Like it's going to, it's going to shorten a bunch of people's lives. And so like what I'm saying about when I'm talking about this stuff, people are, they think it's transphobic, but honestly, I'm more concerned about these people than other people are. That's the thing, is that I am actually concerned. I am actually concerned about their health and their well-being and what's going to happen to them. But you say
and
that
they're not getting the risks explained. Of course, a kid can't understand them. I honestly don't believe a kid can understand those risks. No way. I wouldn't have been able to understand. But even adults, they're rushed through this process now. And I remember when my friend went through it, and everything was explained to her. She had to have somebody go with her to ensure that if she missed anything, somebody could explain it to her, and that was me. And they call that gatekeeping now. It wasn't gatekeeping. They explored every other possibility that could be causing her to feel the way that she did before they were going to judge. And she appreciated it because she worked through a lot of stuff in her life. And it, wasn't bad therapy. It was good therapy. And she still got to try. What's the rush? Like, what is the huge rush?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I also had a friend that went through, you know what I mean, the sex reassignment surgeries and everything. But like there was a long list of like criteria that had to be met. There was years of therapy, and it was to ensure, like, because obviously you don't want somebody to regret it. That was the insurance, to make sure that people like, like to lower the risk of regret, to make sure that that person really like needed to do that it was medically necessary. Like, I don't know anything that they rush you through like that. Like we don't treat girls who are anorexic or bulimic with liposuction. We don't do that. Right. You know what I mean? Because that wouldn't be healthy for them. And I'm just saying, like, we need to slow down.
And it took me forever to get diagnosed as hypothyroid, and I kept telling them I was, but they weren't going to give me the pills straight off until, they had lots of proof in my blood work. I couldn't just walk in and get affirmed and say, and I actually have a degree in veterinary technology. So, I was aware of what my symptoms were because I knew what the symptoms were in cats and dogs. They were the same in humans. But I couldn't just go in and say, well, I'm a vet tech, so I know that I have hypothyroidism. So give me the pills. No, they did
self-diagnose. That's
I had to go see an endocrinologist. They weren't just gonna go, here you go, mom, here's the candy. No, I mean, and I hear these stories of these kids. And people say, oh, no, it takes for a long time to get. No. Why are these kids saying it's 1 visit or 2 visits? Minutes.
Some of them are saying it's even the first visit now, or they don't even have to go in for a physical visit because they had telehealth. And so they were able to get it like over the phone. And then like there's parents that have told me that like kids are literally going like, in groups to these, like, oh, we're all just, and there's peer pressure from other kids. And so when that kind of thing is happening, and it's something that is sterilizing them, when you remove these medications sterilize them.
And how do you know that they don't have another pre-existing condition that giving them puberty blockers of testosterone isn't going to aggravate? I mean, when I worked, and I only worked very briefly as a vet tech for like basically an internship, but somebody brings in their cat or their dog and they want to do some procedure on them or want to give them some we feel like they should get some medicine. We want to take blood work first. You know why? Because we want to make sure that the medication we give them isn't going to make things worse and kill them on the spot. And they're not even doing that. I mean, I'm worried that that's going to happen, is that we're going to have some medical malpractice case where some kid is given these hormones and they die.
Yeah, we don't.
Because nobody tested their blood.
They're being used off label. That's the thing. There isn't,
And I mean, medications are used off label all the time, all the time.
Yeah,
But so that doesn't concern me as much. But the fact that they're not taking blood work prior to starting
well, it
them,
means that they're not getting the studies and looking into it and following it the way that they would if it was approved for on label. Like they would have to actually, well, they're supposed to, actually have like a bunch of studies. A lot of the studies have all been like retracted or altered after the fact, and they're not reliable. I mean, there's other countries that are completely walking away from all of this, and they're like, no, we're in Tavistock, in the UK, like
right? What a
they're shutting
disaster.
they shut it down, and there's thousands of people with lawsuits against them because these were pushed out so fast on kids. And so I think that, you know
I mean, I think they're going to open up little regional clinics that can better serve these children. So it's not like they're going to stop, but they have said that they're not going to, only in very rare circumstances will they use puberty blockers, but they will treat the kids gender dysphoria. It's not like they're going to abandon them. They're
yeah,
actually trying to set
kids
that
should get
up to help
treatment.
them.
If they feel that way, then they should be getting treatment, and make sure that, there's always that risk that people talk about, the big S word, and that's a very scary thing that they say to, what I mean, that their kids are not going to be alive, and would you rather pick up their hormones, or do you want to pick up, what I mean, your child? And it's emotional blackmail. I mean, like, it just reminds me of the abusive, like the abuse of what you were just saying, like your ex-husband and other abusers. Like, it's a huge red flag if somebody is using that kind of emotional abuse tactic on you, especially about your own child. I mean, gosh, when
Right.
what like I can't imagine as a parent, like if my daughter had come to me and said those things to me and I took her to a doctor, like I don't know what I would, I mean, I don't know. I can't say either way what I would have done, but I can imagine that is like one of the worst, the hardest things to know, to hear about your child. You know what I mean? It's got to be hard to process. It's got to be like, like hitting you like a ton of bricks if you suddenly get that information. I mean, and then like we have the extremes, right? Like we have Florida where they're like, people are like saying, I have to read the Florida bill again, but I know in California, like that if you don't like you don't affirm your child, then they've taken children away from their parents. There's a young lady who they took away from her mom, and she was medically transitioned, and then that girl later on, took her own life.
Yes,
and so
I read that story.
the state took her
Her
away.
mother testified it was devastating. Devastating.
And I can't imagine how helpless.
But they don't take your kid away if you deny your kid a tattoo or you deny your kid to get their ears pierced. I mean, I know those sound crazy analogies, but like,
well, even if you didn't, like, even if your kid ended up with like, with like cancer or something, and you didn't want to put them on chemotherapy, you wanted to try an alternative treatment, you know what I mean? Like, do they just take your kid away then, or do they, do they have to go through a court system, and there's further process to it if they feel like they want to force you to do that, and force your kid into that treatment? Like, what about, kids that like, you should have bodily autonomy, and no one should be able to forcefully do anything to you as a child that is going to alter you that you don't need, because even if you grow, you need to be able to have a natural puberty. That is a thing that, like,
it sucks. Let's face it, puberty is not fun for anybody. Nobody,
yeah.
I've never heard anybody say they like puberty.
Oh yeah, no, it's awkward. It's weird. Like you're in a weird place.
You transition from being a child to being a grown-up, basically.
That's a transition that everybody should go through. You know what I mean? Your body needs to go through that, because that's what determines if you do actually have that, an actual disorder that you need to have further treatment for. But I mean, like, no, I'm not saying that kids should be abandoned. Maybe we need to have, like, there needs to be therapy for the kids, and maybe there needs to
Oh,
be
yes.
groups for these kids to like connect and bond with each other, but not for that reason. I think that there's a lack of connection that's happening. People are very disconnected and they're looking for this connection, and that's where they
And of course, I'll bring it back to something because I'm a musician. When we were growing up, we connected with our friends through music. You
Yeah.
know, if you were like into classic rock in your favorite band, that's what you were into. If you were into pop in your favorite band, all your friends, you know, you hung out with your friends and you swapped. I'm so old, we swapped vinyl, you know, or brought people over and played it for them. Um,
I
and
remember
if
that. I remember
you
I
remember,
remember sitting on the bed when you got like, the new Steely Dan album come out, and we all sat there
yeah,
and listened to it from back to front and didn't say a word until it was over.
yeah,
Like people
handed
people
over
don't
to the other
consume
side
music
the
like
whole
that
thing.
now.
who's in our
Yeah.
chat that had vinyl, like original, like original vinyl.
And then it was, you know, whether it was goth or emo or alternative or whatever. I mean, it was a real big connection. And now the music of today, I mean, I personally think most of it is really terrible, but kids just don't seem to connect like about their favorite band the way that they used to.
No,
And they don't have as
they don't
much
consume
music
it
in
the same way.
school. All right.
That's the
And
thing.
also, you know, we had to save up. You had to save up your pocket money to go buy that, or allowance,
Hmm.
as you call it in America, to go buy that album, or you got it like for Christmas or for your birthday. You know what? Because you had to. Nowadays, you don't have to buy music, right? People think it's free, even though we have to pay to put it to distribute our music, but people think it's free. But you know, back in those days, it was the greatest thing. Like you saved up your money to go buy that album. And this went on all the way through to CDs.
Yep.
You wanted to get it home. You wanted to play it. And you wanted, like Steve said, you wanted to bring all your friends over and sit around and
But
I
now it's just
remember that
digital. It's all
yeah.
digital.
so vividly. Like even even before I should remember it for those times. Like I was 10 years old when The Wall came out, and
Yeah.
I remember sitting on the bed with my babysitter and her little brother and somebody else, and them guys, the older kids, are sitting there smoking a doob, and we're just little kids, but we're like soaking it right up. Like Roger, we listened to that album like 5 times in a row. Like, over the next like few days, we just kept listening to that. So that music is just like burned into my memory banks. With there's a whole slew of records since I was a little kid. That's how I consume music. And I think that's the inherent difference with today's kids, is the fact that they don't consume it in the same way. They don't share it socially in the same way. It's not as limited. It used to be like a limited resource. Like you had access
Yeah.
to only what you had and what they were gracious enough to play on the radio, and like we literally spent time calling the DJ to make them play that song so we could record a cassette copy of it, so we
Yep.
didn't have to wait for it anymore. Like before we could buy the record. Like I remember doing this as a child, like many times for years. We didn't know it was going to change into this. Now it's like the trade-off is the kids don't consume the music in the same way socially, but every single person is a producer of something now. So like it
Yeah,
used to
right.
only be produced in small batches by small groups of businesses that put it out. And that's why we consumed it the way we did. Now everybody has access to everything and anybody can make it. So it's like it just like blew the walls out of the whole, theater that was there before. Now it's just across the board. Anybody can be any sort of content creator. If you can master the technology, you can put out content and you can make stuff.
It's
Yeah, and
true.
think about this, like, right? So you were a kid and you were dating somebody, right? And you made them a mixtape of all your favorite songs to express how you felt about them. And boys did it for girls and girls did it for boys.
Yeah.
And you gave it to them. And that was only for them, right? But nowadays people can make a playlist and I can say, the playlist is for Lucky. And then 5 minutes later I could say, well, this playlist for you, Steve, and none of
Yeah,
you would ever know the difference. So
exactly.
it's not even the same as sitting there and putting together this mixtape that was just so
No,
you were curating it perfectly for this
yeah. That's what I
crush
was
that you
that's
had.
There was an art to making the
I was saying
mixtape.
this to Skyla earlier.
That's my daughter who's 19.
I was saying that the algorithm is the curator on Spotify, right?
Yeah.
They know the criteria, they find it, and they curate. I'm like, they need to pay people to do that specifically for people, because if I could get a job doing that, I know lots of useless information about who produced what and what records came out when and what labels they're on and all of these inane facts that I have in my memory, but I can't really apply it any longer. I used to do that, and I'd be a nerd and write the details of the record company of where the track came from on the tape, so that people knew and could research and see who produced what and stuff. Like, you get super hung up on the geekiness of it, but like
Yeah.
it feels like that that's just like an entirely different thing now. It's like all those skills that I developed for my whole life, like since I'm 5 years old, you know what I mean? Like, my mom gave me a box of 45s when I was 5 and a stack of albums, and I was off to the races from there, you know? And
Yeah.
I didn't really start playing music until like well into my 20s. I was like 26 when I actually started to figure out chords on a guitar. So it's like, it's weird. It's like, I want to be that curator for people and be like, no, well, you like this? Well, here, try this, because that's what I end up saying to Sky. She plays me a track, and she has excellent taste in music, and it's all over the place. So I'm like, oh, that one's really cool. That reminds me of this. It'd be some girl singer piano thing, and I'm like, that sounds like Carole King. That seems like that's where that came from. And I'll point her to all the original sources of things,
like the original inspiration sources.
like the inspiration for the sound that she's digging. You know what I mean? Like, well, this sounds like that, and that sounds like this, and you can do that really pretty accurately. Like, you know, it seems like I have a pretty good grasp on what reminds me of. At least if it reminds me of something, it stirs my memory. Like, oh, well, these people did that way before these people. Here, check this out.
Him and her have like a very special bond when it comes to hooking up the Bluetooth in the van. Like, we have the van is old; it's a '91. You know what I mean? So we just have like a little it has a stereo thing on there, but it's it's got we have a little.
It's got a Bluetooth in it.
It's got a Bluetooth that plugs into auxiliary. So they take turns playing different music to each other, and it's really great, because it's like they get that's their conversation. They get to kind of express back and forth through the music, and I think that's really good. And that's what we're talking about, how friends used to do that. But you guys do it that way with the Bluetooth. I mean, that's interesting, though.
Yeah, it's just like the natural evolution of it. Like, that's
I'm finding that some of the teens, and I used to run a lot of music spaces on Twitter, and I'd have a lot of teens sometimes come in, and the ones that had the best manners, they were the nicest, and they were the coolest, and they seemed like the most well adapted, were the ones who had this relationship with music still. And I would sometimes go, they'd be doing a version of some old, I remember there was one young girl, she was 16. She was singing "Fly Me to the Moon," which is too old for me. My mother liked that, but I'm old. And she was singing a version of it that she could make it today, because it was so current. She'd adapted it. And I was like, where did you learn this? She's like, oh, yeah, my dad loves that song, and my granddad loves that song. And they sat down and kind of taught me about it. And I'm going,
shout out,
wow,
Tony Bennett, who just passed away, actually, too.
Yeah.
Sorry, he sang the hell out of that one.
Yeah, he sure did. But that's the kind of thing. If parents have that relationship, if there is that going on. I was in DC when I was working, and I left the office one day, and I saw these kids outside playing on the street. Kids, I mean, these guys were in high school, and they were playing the Beatles. And I stopped to listen, and then I was chatting with them. I'm like, where on earth did you guys learn the Beatles? And they're like, oh, we love the Beatles, man. Yeah, we totally.
It's kind of like
dad was into the Beatles.
That should be required consumption. That's what I told Sky before. I was like, you guys in school, there should be just like a music appreciation class where you have to listen to certain things. You have to, because it's required. You want to get the credit, you have to listen to it. And then you could feed them all the good stuff, and I don't know.
That would be a great class to
I think
have.
that would
Could
be
you
a-
imagine
I
teaching
would
that
love
class,
that.
a music appreciation class, and like, you
I would
know,
dig the
and
hell out
just
of that.
really the exposure to different types of music that you could like
Yeah.
possibly like.
Just the roots of everything, you know what I mean? Just explaining the basic roots of what's happened in this country and in the UK, you know, over the last 70 years of music, you know what I mean? That would be a fantastic class, and it would be so full of good. It'd be like a what's his name? Who's the guy who did Almost Famous?
Oh yeah. Why can't I think of his name?
Director. Yeah, it'd be like one of his movies. You know what I mean? It was just like soundtrack that just gets better as it goes. You know, you're like, oh, I love that
I know,
song.
and
I
if-
love that song. I love that song.
If they let you like actually play music on here without getting like, you know, busted every time, you know, like that would be such a cool show to have. You know what I mean?
Well, you can always play any of mine. I'll approve it.
Yeah, we should spin some of her actually.
Yeah, how do we do that?
You just go on Spotify and play it. The same way you share everything, anything. Everything.
But yeah, so I think kids need music again. I think music needs to come back somehow. And in school,
it's like going out of
playing in
school, right?
it's
Like it
bad.
seems like it's less in schools and less
Yeah,
in
they don't
schools.
have the school bands and choirs. You never hear this with kids anymore. And I don't understand it. It was wonderful. They don't seem to even have like a play that they do every year. And that was just such a huge part of growing up for me.
Yeah. That's where I
And
learned. That's how I learned how to sing. Was like singing along with the radio or standing outside with other kids that were singing some hook to a song, and we figure out, hey, we can do this in harmony, and like, wow, cool, check it out, and like that. And that inspired the hell out of me. I didn't start playing music till maybe,
or even just getting excited.
15
Like
years
I
later.
went to a convent boarding school, and like I remember, like we were all obsessed with the Police at the time. They were coming out with a new song. I think it might have been "Don't Stand So Close to Me." It was like it was going to be played on the Irish radio in the morning, and like you could have dropped a dime in our entire dormitory because we all had the radio on, and the nuns were like, "Turn down the radio," and we're like, "Nope," because the Police are coming out with a new song. You know, there
Nice.
was this major bonding between
Yeah.
us all. Even if you hated that girl across the hall, you wanted to beat her up and pull her hair out. It was this bonding moment. The
You know
Police
why?
were coming out with a new song.
Music is universal language.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that you can listen to music that you don't understand any of the words to.
Yep.
It
And
can
it
be
will
in a
get-
completely different language, but you will feel it. You can feel the energy of it. You feel the vibration of it. Like Steve will sing. Steve does, like, he has originals and he does covers too. And it's like he'll sing something, like people will request the most off the wall stuff. And he sings it, and it's like, oh my gosh, I actually like Nickelback like now, or you know, like you're like, what the hell? How does this happen? You know?
Yep.
But it's like you realize that it's not necessarily, you know,
I think it's just the filters that everybody has and their preconceived notion of what it's supposed to sound like. If you play a song like I don't know what this song sounds like, so I'm just going to play it like this. It says the chords are this, so let's try this, and that's what we do. It works out. It works out more than it doesn't.
So I have this. Look at that. I put your name in, and it comes right up.
Oh,
I mean,
good.
like it's like you put in Samsara, and it comes right up. It's super easy to get to. You were like the top first search, and this is on a private browser window, so like it's not doing this based upon any past search. You know, Steve's been listening.
Actually, if I had it to do over again, I would have like not just done Samsara because there are like 26 of us. So.
But you come right up as the first, and that was with a brand new private browser window. So like it's not from our history. So that means like you're coming up as the first artist with this name. So like that's big. that's like
ultimately what you want.
Yeah, that is the goal, right?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
All right. So which one should we go with this? Let's just go in order.
Spin 'em.
All right. I'm gonna mute us. I don't know. I don't know if you have to mute, but let's go ahead and play this. I'm super excited. This is without you. Oh no, really?
What?
I have to sign in and do a whole thing. All right, hang on.
I think it'll only take 30 seconds. Yeah.
Let me. Okay, I took it off of there. Do you have an account already?
Yeah.
I took it off of the screen, so it's.
That's my top streaming song for some reason on Spotify. It doesn't do as well on the other platforms. But for some
Isn't
reason,
that
people
weird?
like that on Spotify. Mm-hmm.
It's like certain ones will do better on certain platforms. Same with Steve. Like when he does, like on TikTok, he'll have like 3,000 or 4,000 views on something, but like on YouTube, it has like 10.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like different platforms have I'll notice the difference between Apple Music and Amazon and Deezer and I mean all of them. They're just different people like different music.
Yep. Thank heavens.
But it's interesting that they conglomerate on different platforms based on their taste.
Nice. All right, I got it.
Probably want to take your master volume and turn it down a little.
I'm gonna
bit.
mute me while we play the song.
I know, but
Me
this
too.
song isn't just cranking full blast, so it's ease it back.
What do I need to do? Turn it down?
Yeah. Just a smidgen.
Just a little bit.
A little bit. Should be...
All right, I put it down like 3/4.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, put it down.
This is harder than I thought that it would be. I close my eyes, but your face is all I see. Too many memories dancing in my head. There's way too much space now in my bed. But I'll live again, I'll laugh again if I get back up and I try again. I dare my heart to spread its wings and fly high, high. I give up on my regrets. I forgive and I forget. The hardest thing I'm ever gonna do is to live without you. I'm gonna have to lean on just myself now. I'm gonna have to stop blaming anybody. It ain't no mountain, it ain't no cross. It's just a picture that for now I blows. I'm gonna have to deal with just myself. I'll live again, I'll laugh again if I get back up and I try again. I dare my heart to spread its wings and fly high, 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 high. I give up on my regrets. I forgive and I forget. The hardest thing I'm ever gonna do is to live without you. Oh, I get up every day and wash those dreams right off my face. Look in the mirror and I see sometimes it's just over. Girl, you gotta start over. I live again, I laugh again, and maybe I will do it again. I'll trust again, and I'm sure I'll cry again. Oh, just gotta get up again. I need to believe again. I dare my heart to spread its wings and fly high. I give up on my regrets. I forget the hardest thing I'm ever gonna do is to live without you.
Oh
Hell.
my gosh, that's
Yeah.
so beautiful.
Thank you.
If ever there was a heaven on earth, it's there in your eyes, you've ended my search. If ever there was a feeling so right, it must be the way that I feel tonight. After all my fingers crossed, just when I thought all hope was lost, that's when I found you. It all was worth the cost. If ever there was a fire so strong, it's here in our hearts, it's where we belong. And just like that day, the first time we sang, ooh, there is a spark and maybe a bang. Now I'm not worried anymore of what my future holds in store, because all my life you're what I waited for. When I'm singing here with you, I'm the best I'll ever be. All my dreams came true because of you. You mean the world to me. If ever there was a good time to cry, it's these tears of joy that fall from my eyes. 'Cause being with you, it's just like a dream. If only you knew just how much you mean. Oh, I'm not worried anymore of what my future holds in store, because all my life you're all that I've looked for. If ever there was a love for all time, if ever there was, it's yours and it's mine. Our love, it is for all time.
Wow.
Oh, go ahead. Now you go.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
so
do.
beautiful.
I was playing along with that stuff the other morning, and that one lent itself really well to to like trippy guitar lines and David Gilmour
Ooh.
noodles.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you guys got to do a collaboration. You guys are definitely gonna have to do a music show.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have to just get nerd out on music
We
and,
should
and
do
do
that.
a show together. I
should
think
do
that you
that.
guys would have so much fun.
Yeah, those two are sort of very adult contemporary or something, aren't they? People keep telling me. Mm, the second one is very Disney-esque, I guess. That's the one that actually was in a TV show. So I was really proud of that one for getting in a
Hell
TV
yeah.
show. I thought it would get more streams than it did after being in, but it like charted on Shazam after the TV show. So
Oh
Nice.
wow, that's awesome.
It's very cool.
yeah, I mean, they only played like, I think it was 10, 15 seconds of it. Like it was 15 seconds maybe. It was a small little clip in the TV show, but people
amazing.
Shazam it then to find out what it is. So yeah.
Oh, so they figured out they wanted to know the rest of it. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. Sometimes
tracked
they
it down.
blow up and you get millions of streams, but I guess like every time that show will be aired, it will still be in it. So I'll get, royalties on the back end. So at least it's some kind of money because you don't make any money from streaming.
Right.
It's crazy. Now, how did you do it? Did you record in an actual studio or is it at home?
I do everything at home. There's only one of my songs that I went in the studio for, and that was the first one that I released, Blame It on the Rain. And that one I spent a fortune in the studio with an engineer. He actually had worked on Michael Jackson's They Don't Care About Us, so he's kind of a big shot. But everything else I taught myself how to do at my age, an old woman, at home.
Oh yeah.
And the first time I hired some musicians and got all these stems from the musicians, I'm like, what do I do? I didn't know how to mix. So I had to learn how to do that because I'd hired a drummer and a guitar, and I got fabulous talent on Fiverr.com. In other countries, like on Without You, the first one he played, that guitarist is so good. And he's in Bangladesh, and he's just amazing. The bass player's in Bangladesh. I think the drummers in Nigeria, and they're fantastic. They're phenomenal talent.
Yeah.
And they're out there. But then they send you the drummer would send me like 9 stems. I'm like, because I play a little guitar, I play a little acoustic guitar, but I do not play drums. Never did. I don't think I even ever sat behind a drum kit, maybe once. So I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. So luckily I had like a drummer friend who came in the Twitter space, and I was like, I need to turn this down. Which one is it? Because I don't know. Now I do, but at that point, I didn't know a tom from anything else. And he was like, yeah, that's what you need to turn down. That's what you're hearing. And then I have a friend who's a bass player who's been incredibly helpful to me with the bass because I'll play bass. Even though, as a singer, the rhythm section is the most important part of what you're hearing. All your cues are coming from the rhythm section, which is, for anybody who doesn't know, bass player and drums is the rhythm section. But and I've been a singer in bands, but yeah, I don't know how to play them, so I didn't know how to mix. I had to learn that. I had to learn how to master. The hardest part for me always is listening to my own voice and editing my own vocals. If I could give that to somebody to do, I would be a very happy girl because I hate it. We all hate our own voices, I think.
Yeah, it's not the best, the most fun. It's more fun listening to somebody else sing.
Yep.
For me.
Oh yeah.
You need like a music, a music co-op,
Yeah.
Like where
it's you edit my vocals, I'll edit your vocals.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, so I do all that myself, mix, master, distribute. Obviously, that's an easy part. I create the cover art, I create the videos, I promote and whatever promotion I do on a shoestring budget. Everything has been me.
That's amazing.
One woman shop. Yeah.
You did everything yourself.
Well done.
Like that's fantastic. I mean,
I'm still trying to get a halfway decent mix on my live stream. it's just like this never ending thing that never. I trying to do it on a shoestring budget and not have like conditioners to eliminate sounds and hums, and we're sitting in the kitchen of a little apartment with crappy power, and you know what I mean. There's a lot of things to overcome to get a pristine sounding album to happen. Plus I got to write like 9 more songs. That would slow me down.
I've got so many written that are like in various stages that I really need to get back to. Like some need backing vocals, and some just need me to edit the vocals, and some need to be mixed, and some just need to be mastered. And I just have to be in the right mood for it. I go through phases where like I'll be in a mood to create cover art, and I'll be in a mood to work on the vocals, and I'll be in a mood to work on the mixing and mastering, and then I won't be. Then I'm sick of it, because after 2 days of listening, when I'm mastering, I have to listen to it, try to get it to sound good out in the room, try to get it to sound good, on AirPods, try to get it to sound good on other headphones, and you just
that part's a nightmare. I think that's probably like the way I envision it is if I had a system that was just a computer that all it did was measure everything, so I knew the ballpark of every frequency that I'm making, you know what I mean? Then I would have like a way better image of what the thing sounds like, of what the image of, the stereo image that you're making sounds like, and where you like that MTS aspect where you can like put things in the back and move them around like 3-dimensionally and stuff. Like I really want to get into that because that's like fascinating shit. And again, Roger Waters is another one who he like innovated with that quadraphonic stuff. I seen his Radio Chaos tour, and it was just the most amazing holographic weirdness you ever heard. Just like, where did that sound come from? There's dogs over there, and there's crickets over there, and it's just amazing mixing in a big giant.
I'm always considering too, because I do want to get more music in sync, which is TV and movies and commercials. And like I have heard that sometimes these, especially the music producers for TV shows and movies, they'll just look at the waveform and decide, nah, that's not going to work, and they won't even listen to it because they're looking for something more dramatic, and they're looking for it to go up and down. And so I'm always trying to keep that in mind as well. Will this appeal to some? Because that's good money. That's where you actually can make a living on music today. And there's, so many shows. There's like 10,000 shows in production at, any
and
given time.
Scores are definitely made in that format that I was talking about, where it's like a 3-dimensional sound field. It's not just like, left and right and front and rear now. It's like the whole thing. It's like a circular, and film scores are just wildly dynamic, like just crazy low to high things. So the waveforms look nuts on those things a lot of times. So but I'm always looking at that just to make sure, like, are they gonna like not bother to listen, because I do want them to at least listen to give me a chance, even if they decide it's not right for it. But I want to at least, because that really, that's the gift that keeps on giving. If you get a song in a show, you'll keep making the back end royalties every time. So I wrote, actually, the most recent single I released, Hero, I wrote that when I was 26 for an indie movie. And it was 6 minutes long to fill a scene. It was written exactly for the movie. And that's obviously not the version I released. I updated it. But I continue, even today, to get some royalty checks from that. It's streaming somewhere in like Japan or somewhere with subtitles. And I continue to get royalties from that all these years later. So that definitely is where, it definitely is where you want to, get your music. Unfortunately, you don't get the royalties for 9 months to a year on the back end, your songwriting and publishing royalties. So it takes a really long time. But ultimately, when you start getting them, it's really good money.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah, see, I don't know any of this, like with like how that, the back end of that works. Like, how do you even get it in front of people? Like, how do you get like the attention of, of someone who is producing, like how do you get their attention that there's so much
Um,
music being made.
Yeah. So you really have there's sort of a technique to it. I have a sync rep. So he has a library of music from various artists, and they submit a request to him for something that they want, and they're usually very specific, and sometimes they're weird. They're asking for weird things, like they want something that was recorded in 1972, and they won't take anything else. Um, but depends on what the show is, what they're going for. But so he then puts it in front of them, so then there's a sync fee, and so he takes 50%. I also submit to a lot of different, there's different sites that are out there that you can put your music in, and you have to basically pair it up. They'll give you a couple of examples of what they want, maybe 3 examples, and then you're listening to them going, does one of mine sound like that? Now, this is where I have found AI to be extremely helpful, is because I would spend forever trying to listen to the 3 examples, finding out what they had in common. And AI, I can just ask Bing, and Bing will tell me in a minute. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, I got that in this song.
Oh my
So, yeah,
gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
using AI for a lot of that now.
Hell yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah, some of it's got to be, just helpful as a tool. I mean, as long as it
Yeah.
doesn't, become beyond a tool. I think a lot of people are, like we're in the infancy of AI, like, like when the internet was kind of like exposed to the
Yeah.
public, when everyone had dial up, because
Um,
to date ourselves,
But nobody like considers the fact that since that time, everybody is, you know what I mean? They've collected all of that data, and now they have a thing called AI that can anticipate
right.
every single thing that you might think or do or need to be done.
It
They've
really
made
kind of
they
sucks though. I mean, it is not, so I was taking this class, and they were saying, to use AI to come up with your bio. Well, I've worked so long on my bio that I'm done with it. But, just to play along with the class, I said, all right. So I did it. And what it came up with was so generic and so, I don't know, cheesy. But other people, but then I'm a published author, and I have an undergraduate degree in English. Maybe that is different, because most musicians aren't going to actually be authors as well. That's not going to be a typical thing. They might be able to write song lyrics, but that's a whole different skill to writing an actual book that got published. So, other people are going, oh my gosh, this is just incredible. It's great. I would never have been able to write my bio like that. And I'm going, maybe that is the difference, because to me, it's just cheesy. But I guess if you've got nothing,
I
it'll give
think
you
that
something.
I think that's valid to point that out, because Lucky's like always giving me shit about writing songs. Why don't you write something clever? I play Imitosis by Andrew Bird, and she's like, I want you to write songs like that. I'm like, he's brilliant. What do you want from me? Like, I can play the music. I don't feel confident about crafting songs, because I'm such a harsh critic of songs, and I come to figure out what appeals to me in songwriting is generally like truth and storytelling, and something appealing, like all the best parts of Guy Clark and John Prine and Townes Van Zandt and Jackson Brown, and just there's so many different, Robert Hunter and Bob Dylan, and just all these different ideas of a song. And so I'm like, all right, let me try to use the AI to formulate, something along those lines, and try to add all of those dimensions into it. And what it spit out was completely pedestrian and just
Oh, it's
trite, just like, oh, what the fuck is this? This is terrible. I wasted my time doing it with the AI. I should have just tried to write the song myself in that
I had I
vein.
had a great singer, great guitarist come to me a year ago with this song. Well, he'd written sort of a chord progression, and I was like, I need to play keys to it. This really needs to be jazzy. I can just hear it in my head. And he had lyrics that he got from me. Oh my gosh, they were so bad. I had to completely rewrite the lyrics. I was like, this is junk. This is complete junk. I'm like, tell me what you're trying to convey in the lyrics and I'll write them, and I was able to do it, of course, pretty easily. But yeah, I was just,
It's
and then
funny, like
he
if
wrote
somebody
another
asked
song
me to
and it
do
was,
it, if somebody asked me to do that, like what you just said, I would have no problem taking whatever they had and conveying and articulating those thoughts that they had more effectively than they did.
yeah,
But by the same token, I'm like, nah, I'm not really good at doing this. But like I know that I have that ability to do that thing. But when it comes to my own song or my own
I just
thought,
push him.
I feel like
him.
I don't. I just
shit.
I don't know. I get hung up on the details. I
I
think.
push him and challenge him because
One thing AI is good at is rhyming. I will
Yeah.
give it that much.
I'm good at rhyming. You know,
No, AI is good at rhyming. Really, really
most
good
of
at
the
rhyming.
timing.
oh, she said AI though.
AI is good
right?
at rhyming, but that's all it's good at. That's
That's all
like
it's good
that
at.
was the thing. It was just like, oh, you rhyme the most obvious thing with the most obvious thing. Excellent. That's
Like he brought me some lyrics that were. He ended up. I don't know what he did with that, but it was something like, um, "I'm laying on my bed, the sun's setting. It's so hot, it's red." It was so cheesy, and it was like, please, such a contrived rhyme. Yeah.
That's wild. I was laying on my bed. It was so hot. It was red. I thought I'd be dead.
I think that was the next line. It was really cheesy, really contrived, and
That
no.
could be really fun, actually. We could just make bad punk songs using the AI. It'd be like AI punk, and just like just sing.
What I don't like are these vocals, because sometimes the vocals really almost sound human, and I've heard a few of them. So
Oh
I can
yeah,
still tell they're not human, but they almost sound human,
they're
and I
getting a
kind of
lot
hate
better at it for sure.
the AI stuff like makes me like I don't know, like it's almost like cringy to me. Like I don't know, it makes me feel a certain way. Just like same thing with like robots. Like there's this weird robot thing that's in our store at our grocery store, right? And it goes around. Do you have like the giant grocery stores down there?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like the
I
same
haven't
as
seen one.
Giant, but it's called Stop and Shop, and they have these big gray things, and they're robotic like spill catchers or whatever, and they put giant googly eyes. Like, where's Mike's?
You are just
Oh my gosh. That sounds like a Dalek. Did you ever watch Doctor Who?
I didn't
No,
watch Doctor Who. Did you watch Doctor Who?
Yeah, of course. It's almost. It's not quite.
It's like this.
They're pretty
Its
similar
name is Marty.
looking.
It's Marty. Is
Yeah.
what its name is.
Yeah, they're
He has
pretty
a name.
similar.
I don't like it. I don't like it. It creeps me out. I feel like the thing is like following me around. I have a conspiracy theory that the thing friggin' like scans us somehow.
I immediately run away back to the TARDIS. Get in. And,
Yeah, I'd be jumping, because it's bigger on the inside too.
That's
So
right.
I'd be jumping.
I'm
outside.
immediately upstairs in the swimming pool.
When I was a little kid, my mother wouldn't let me watch Doctor Who because I would have nightmares. I was so scared of it. Which is kind of amusing considering what was going on in our house was a lot scarier. But maybe that's what I was having my nightmares from.
Oh my gosh, you should talk about like what it was like as a child, some of your childhood stuff, because like you brought it up before and I was like blown away. Like I was like, well, that took a turn. That took a turn. I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. So my mother had an affair with somebody, and she was an Irish Catholic woman filled with, I guess, guilt, and she decided that I was the spawn of Satan or something. I got in with some people that were, obviously, I don't know all the details of this, but got in with some people that were into satanic worship. So, and my dad at the time, who actually wasn't my biological father, but I always call him dad and get mad if anybody gets mad at me for calling him dad and says my stepfather. I get because I did have a wicked stepfather later. So to me, my dad is the man who brought me up, just because he didn't contribute the sperm doesn't matter to me. But my he was an alcoholic, and he was hanging out with all these wealthy people, I guess, and they were having, you can imagine the 70s clothes and that stuff, and having their drug parties. And I mean, I actually saw someone die after shooting up with heroin, and don't know what happened, but he died in front of me. And I'm a little kid, so I would walk into the house, and my mother liked to have a lounge in the living room because I don't know, she thought she was posh or something. If you understand what posh means, it's like stuck up English person. So, well, even though she was Irish. So my mom, on the left hand side, there was my mom and her people doing their satanic stuff, and they would grab me and want to put me on the altar, strip me, and sacrifice small animals in my honor, like rabbits and frogs, and I think they had snakes. I don't really remember. It was like, I just remember there were these animals, and they'd smear me in their blood, and then they'd go off and have bloody orgy in front of me. I didn't know what it was, but I just knew these people were naked and riding. So it was a long time later when I learned what an orgy was, and I'm like, oh, that's what those people were doing. But if I went in the other room, if I, didn't get lucky and didn't make it to the kitchen, if I went on the right, my dad was in there with all these people listening to music. Everybody's getting stoned on heavy duty stuff, popping acid, whatever, in the 70s clothes, the big, huge bell bottoms and the wacky colors and all this stuff. If I was lucky, I made it to the kitchen where my grandmother was sitting reading people's fortunes by cards. And that was the most normal room in the house. So.
That's crazy. I mean, to realize later on in life, like what you experienced was so extreme that like, like you just don't expect that, like you just, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. And then you have memory of it all, and then like put all the pieces together later on. I mean, wow.
Well, then she got out of it when I was 7, and she went back to like the church or something. And so then she would tell me that I was evil, insane, possessed of demons, and had to die to save the world. And she would try to force me to take an overdose. I mean, obviously, she was mentally ill, very, very severely mentally ill, and completely untreated. And she may have had, I think she had, a bunch of things, but she may have had bipolar, because she would go on these sprees where she'd take us shopping, and it was great because you got whatever you wanted. But then she'd have times where she lay in bed depressed. So, now that I am an adult and I know about this, I think possibly it was bipolar, but I do think there was more going on with her. So yeah, but she would try to force me to take overdoses, and my stomach was pumped 7 times between I was 7 and 13, and nobody ever did anything about it. That was the interesting thing. Like, why didn't they take me away?
Where were you living at this time?
Like England and then Ireland.
Okay.
And there was some massive thing in England where I was considered, because I was extremely skinny, and some little kid died, and it was on the news, and it turned out that like she was the same height and the same age as me, but she weighed more than me, and they were really concerned about her weight. And so at that point, there was some big thing I think the school did. But I think a lot of it was because they were just really starting to come down on whatever was going on with me when they moved us from England to Ireland. And so in Ireland, it was a lot more hush hush, whatever was going on. Nobody talked about anything, they hide everything. So I think that's probably why they got away with a lot of what they did.
That's just like, wow. I can't imagine.
It's all like a movie to me now, if you know what I mean. There were times in my life where I would get emotional about it, where it was hard to talk about. It's not anymore. It's just kind of there, it's just kind of part of what happened. And
yeah,
I guess you just get to accept it,
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at with a lot of the stuff that I went through, when I was younger too. It's just like now it's just part of something that I can say this has happened. I've kind of processed it. You know what I mean? It just it doesn't hold that same like open wound. You know what I mean? And I would never ask you about that if, like, you know what I mean, if you hadn't already like publicly spoken about it or anything. I
Oh
don't.
yeah, I'm an open book about it, especially to
Yeah.
help someone else. I mean, I still hear her voice telling me that I was ugly, which she always told me that I'm hideous and that I'm as hideous inside as I am outside. Because any time anybody would get to know me, they'd see what an ugly person I am. Um, but definitely how ugly I was, and really, and then my ex-husband, who was abusive, he told me I was ugly too. So that's where I have this body dysmorphia and this weird thing where like I'm convinced that I'm hideously ugly and everybody's staring at me because they've never seen anybody so ugly. And then people are like, "No, you actually look pretty good." And I'm like, "Huh? That couldn't be possible because I hear their voices in my head."
So you have to be able to stop those tapes and, you know, rewind
It's hard.
and record over it.
It's hard because they're there. They're just there.
I know
You know,
it is.
and
It's really hard. And what do you think is like what ways can we support people that have body dysmorphia? Like what way what helps you, you know, like to get through that? Because I know like there's a lot of girls that are, you know, that deal with this, and a lot even and young men that deal with it too, and adults that deal with it. And I don't really like know what to do besides, you know, just giving them actual, you know, reassurance of, you know, whatever, you know, like I don't really know what else to really do. I'm honest with them.
I don't
I won't
know.
lie to them, you know, because I don't think that's any better to lie to somebody. Um, but I'm, you know, I feel like there should be a way for us to be able to support the people that deal with it, you know, but it's a really
You
hard.
just see something different, you know. You just like with eating disorders, and I know that, you know, I was anorexic as a teenager as well. Um, and I often wonder if there's some kind of, you know, something going on there, a correlation, the body dysmorphia, anorexia, and then maybe also the fact that, like I said, I wanted to be a boy after sexual abuse. Like, where's the correlation in all of this?
It
Is
seems to
there
be a
something?
commonality among the young ladies who transitioned.
Yep,
It seems to
yep,
be a very commonality that I hear within their stories.
yep. And I'm also on the autism spectrum. Of course, I didn't know that as a child, you know, because that wasn't diagnosed back then. I didn't find that out till I was 45, you know, and that's another one of those factors that you hear about, especially in the detransitioners. Is that, you know, is this all combined?
And it presents differently for men and women too, which is really interesting. And then if you have autism and then also ADHD, which they never did a combo diagnosis of that before, but now they're starting to actually do
I
that.
know, yeah. And
And
I don't have ADHD actually.
yeah,
So,
I'm neurodivergent, and you know, and I have ADHD, but they didn't diagnose me with that until I was an adult. That's what I got that diagnosis as an adult, whereas I got the other diagnoses when I was a kid, because they never did both, and because you know, autism looks different in females than it does males. It's completely it's like it's really strange how it presents that way.
and
And
we
like,
probably just cope with it better or mask it better because we're more social
Hmm.
than males,
Yep.
generally speaking.
yep.
And that's
And I'll
one
have
theory.
like it's like almost like a battle sometimes between the you know, between the two. Like it's really weird how it kind of like does its own kind of like self balance of just how I'm feeling. Like I could be really social at times and want to be like around a bunch of people, and then other times I'm just like not. It's completely the opposite, and I can't do it. Like it's like I get I it's really strange how it can
No, I'm like, I understand. I'm like that too because I'm actually quite extroverted, but then I need my time out. I need, like, I could go, you know, 3 nights and go out every night and be incredibly social, but then I got to get my time out and be really quiet, and I don't want to talk to anybody or hear anybody for like a whole 24 hours. So
yeah.
yeah, and most people in the autism spectrum are introverted, so I'm like even odd for my own people, of course. Wouldn't that be just the case? I can't even do one thing and just be par for the course. But,
Yeah, it's true. It's weird. It's weird. Like I tell Steve, I'm like, yeah, it's weird. There's like every person kind of has like their own rules as to how
yeah.
things work and like how things, you know what I mean? Like I've met, like when I worked at the shelter, I really always I bonded a lot with the kids that were autistic, probably because I understood them. And like I wouldn't have to, we wouldn't even have to communicate verbally, you know what I mean? Like I just was able to communicate with the kids. And there was this one it was a single dad, and the little boy, which, oh my gosh, he's probably like so grown now, I wouldn't even recognize him, but he was really little. And like I was like, you have to keep his food separate, you have to keep it there's a reason why he's not eating, you're giving him too much, and you need to keep it separate for him, and don't let it touch, and you know, just a little bit at a time, you're overstimulating him. And they like did that, and then he started, like, you know, eating his food. Like it just, I could just tell like what he needed.
The vast majority of us are like that. The vast majority of us do not want things on our plate touching. And I've never been able to stand it. Like when people bung stuff on a plate, I can't eat that now. Please let me get my own plate of food, you know?
Yes! Oh my god! Oh my god!
The mashed potatoes are touching the turkey on Thanksgiving. This is disgusting.
Not another one.
Did you hear Steve?
People.
There's rules. There's just rules.
Yeah.
There's texture rules. They're like, if something like if clothing doesn't feel a certain way, like if
tags, do not let me near those itchy, nasty tags. Get them away from me. Yeah. It's got to be 100% cotton. And a big rule for me is don't just come over unexpectedly. I will freeze inside the door and I will not open the door. I don't care what you need. I don't care what you want. Text me and tell me you're coming. You know, please. It's easy to do. And another rule that I have is like, if we're supposed to meet at 4:00, do not show up at 4:45. Just weird, odd little rules that make perfect sense to me. You know, I think that's why I get along with cats, because they're sort of autistic as well. They seem to have autistic little brains. They don't like things move. They like everything the same way. They want to get fed at the same time. You know, they're a lot like me.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how like and everybody has different, like, you know, like their own personal things, but there's a lot of commonalities within those things that you'll notice across the board. And
I think it's weird. I don't have like a lot of those things, but I do have some of those traits, like where I'm sitting and the stuff around me. I'll be like meticulous and obsessive about moving it around where I want it to be, exactly where I want it to be. I'll pick things up, put it back down, stuff. Like I do that, and I notice that I do it more now than I ever noticed that I did it before. I don't know what that is. Like I have this need for order around me, like, but everything's a complete mess anyway, but has to be exactly the mess that I want. Otherwise.
Right. You know your mess. You know everything is in it. Yeah.
It's weird. Humans are weird.
Yeah, we have weird traits and characteristics.
And I also think, I think a lot of teenagers that are on the spectrum, we sort of almost have like a gender or identity disorder because we don't fit in with the other kids, you know. And I remember that very clearly. Like I didn't fit in.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know why I didn't fit in. I just knew I was weird, but I didn't know why. And by all intents and purposes, I mean, I had the Farrah Fawcett hairdo of the 80s that was in style. You know, I dressed like I had fashionable clothes. I wore makeup. But I just knew I was weird and I didn't fit in. I was excited if I got invited somewhere and always worried I'd blow it, you know, that I just wouldn't be like everybody else. And I got along better with boys than I did with girls because I didn't want to spend an hour discussing shampoo. That was completely boring to me. I don't make small talk. You know, to this day, I never understand what to say when somebody says, "How are you?" Do I respond literally and tell them, or am I supposed to say, fine, thank you, how are you? And I've sort of conditioned myself to say, fine, thank you, how are you? But I grit my teeth because that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah,
So,
like
I got along
not
better with the boys because they'd want to get into a discussion. Yeah. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
like I end up having like the most amazing conversations with like strangers. Like we don't
Yeah.
talk small talk. We end up talking something that's a real issue that we, and that's why I like doing the show, is because I get to do that and like have like, a one-on-one with somebody, and and just really like, just have a good conversation, because I feel like we're missing that. We're missing having these conversations, and it's just it's nice to do. It's nice to really like get to know somebody, I don't know. I just really, take the time to do it.
Yep. I agree. And yeah, we don't do that enough. But yeah, I don't do small talk. To me, it's like, I used to hate when I worked in an office and I had to make small talk at the water cooler or the coffee machine. And it's like, somebody go, how's your weekend? Well, what do you want me to answer? Or what did you do? They'd say, what did you do over the weekend? I'm like, and I'd like to list out the 20 things that I did, but I know they're not going to be there for long enough, and that's boring. I guess I'm supposed to say I had a good one. I've never been able to figure it out. So, but yeah, I do think maybe that contributes to that gender dysphoria that these kids are going through, because they don't feel like they fit in.
I mean, yeah. I mean, look, when I went to, when I was in middle school, we had the youth center after school, and we had music, and there was the DJs up in the tower, and we it was with the music. There was a lot of connection with the music, and now it's not the same. There's a disconnect there that's happening.
Yeah, I think, I do think the lack of music is responsible for probably a lot of depression in kids too. Because, like we went and we listened to our music and we kind of cried or we laughed or whatever, the boyfriend said no or didn't ask you out that you were hoping for, and you went and you put on your album and you just lay there and you cried it out. And I think that's missing.
Yeah, it does. It does. It feels like that there is definitely something that we're missing, and I think that that's a piece of it. I think
And where
because
there's music, there's dance, and dance is really good for you. It's good exercise, and it's just good to shake off your body. Even me, an autistic person, I love to dance, and it's
Mhm.
just good. It's just good and healthy to dance. And when you're a teenager, you dance maybe in a group with, or at least we did, in a whole group, boys and girls. And we weren't moving that much because we were dancing at like U2 or something, but we were like together and sharing something and moving our bodies. And I think that's something healthy. There's a good feeling to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we should be, we have to find ways to mutually connect with each other. I think that that's important. And sometimes I think it's really hard for people to like say, okay, well, to think of starting something, you're probably like, oh my gosh, like that's huge. But like ways that you can do that is there's organizations, or you can go to an organization that's already established and maybe see if they have something like that, or see if you can get enough people to do that, especially like in your local area. I think that that's just like, that's having that sense of community. I think is that gives us the roots. Like I grew up as a military brat, so like I moved around every couple of years, and I finally ended up in Connecticut, and I've stayed here. And the apartment that I'm in, like I've been here, gosh, it's gonna be 13 years. Yeah,
Wow.
13 years. So like this is the longest I've ever lived in one place in my entire life. My entire life. Like before that was like 4 years, I think tops was like the longest I lived in one place. So I mean, so I've kind of like, I've grown some roots here, and I grew those roots deeper by like being in the community that I'm in, and everything like that. But I think that there's not enough of that. There's not enough of that establishment of like it used to be that like there was get-togethers, there was people,
Yeah.
you knew your neighbors type of thing more, and I don't feel like it's necessarily the same anymore. Like
Yeah,
there's
and
a,
I think, because people have naturally sort of gotten a lot, not everyone, but a lot of people kind of gotten away from religion. And there was a lot of that if you belong to a church. And now a lot of
yeah.
people don't do that. So that's gone. Yeah. But somebody has to start. That is one thing I was saying to a friend of mine recently that, other bands always love when I came out to see them because I'll be the first one on the dance floor. I don't care. It's like if the
Love to
music
win.
moves me, I'm getting out there. And there's always 10 people that are dying to dance, but they won't
But
go
yeah,
until
yep.
someone gets out there.
I did
So
it over and
everybody's
over. When Steve was playing out all the time, I was always the one to like, all right, come on, everybody, and I would get up there and dance first, and then the room would be grooving because everyone would join in because they don't want to be the first one to do it. You're
they
right.
don't want to be the first, yeah. As long as somebody's doing it, then they don't want to leave. We're such pack animals, really, because then when somebody's dancing, you don't want to leave them being the only one dancing. So then everybody else kind of wants to go out and join them on the dance floor, so they don't stand out. We really are like, I think we forget that we really are sort of pack animals in so many ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we go back to it, like in a tribal sense, you know what I mean? A tribe isn't, like everyone's like, oh, it's too tribal, it's too tribal. No, but there can be healthy tribes, and we talk about that a lot
Yeah.
on this channel. Like, like we need to have healthy tribes, and a community is a tribe. Like we have one here. We have, we call each other the Baritonians. I mean, Rick Overton gave us the name. I mean, how could I not? Like we love Rick. So he named us, and like it really it fits, and we have like our little communities online. But I think that sometimes we need to have them also like offline too, and try to have them in our communities as well, and find that connection, and build it to be bigger. Like I feel like we're losing communication skills with each other because online it's really like difficult a lot of times for people to, like everyone has different communication levels, and then people will just start name calling at you, and it's like, you know what, that's not going to get us anywhere. Like you're like where does that get us if you start calling me this or that or this or that? Like really? Like then this just shows you're starting a name call. That means that you are not interested in conversation. And, like I'm not.
And it's over because everybody's upset and offended. And yeah, that's, back in the day, like I was a bleeding heart liberal, and I had friends who were extremely conservative and religious conservative. They were friends. We used to, we talked politics. We talked about everything, but we agreed to disagree because our friendship was worth so much to us. Plus, you could get to see somebody else's perspective on something and why they believe that way. There's nothing wrong with the discussion. It'd be so boring. I mean, yeah, it'd be like, as we said earlier, it'd be like being in a cult if everybody saw everything the same way. I don't want to be around people like that. I want to talk.
And I find that that's a lot of that, like, especially like, like we were heavy in like the left when we first like kind of like started the podcast and really joined Twitter. We were heavy into like the politics on the left, and we realized we were like, no, this isn't right, because we would call something out and then like a whole like mob mentality happens and everybody like piles on you, and you're like, wait a minute, why can't we talk about this? Why is that we are not? Why is something off limits? Why?
I don't want to think the way anybody does. I mean, it might coincidentally happen, but I have my own brain. I want to come and we might agree, but there might be things we disagree, and that's fine. I just don't understand when this became so like angry and militant, that everybody hate, and we're all divided, and like you've got to be over in your own little pocket, and then you got to do everything they say. No, I'm an individual. Sorry. So,
yeah, I don't like that. I've never been like one to just go along to get along. You know, I'm
Right.
like the one that stands up against the crowd. Like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going along with that. That's not right. Like, you know, and I'm not afraid to do that. And I take a lot of heat for it. I take a lot of heat for being the person that will be the first person that will stand up. Like when my daughter had her graduation, she was at high school college graduation because she was in oh my gosh, it was like a double school. Like basically she went to her high school was at the college, so she was completing college
Oh
and high
wow,
school at the same time. Yeah.
cool.
So we were there, and you know, like they did the, you know, whatever you think about it, you know, like, they did the Pledge of Allegiance, and we didn't stand for that. We didn't. Just was not feeling very patriotic at that time. There was a lot that was going on. It was during all the COVID stuff, and
Mm.
I was just, you know, like, no, this is my protest of this. I'm gonna sit. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just not participating because it felt very indoctrination feeling and very cult like. And I just, you know, out of like needing to have rebellion against
You
it,
can feel it.
we we sat, and we were the only ones, and people looked at us like we were crazy because we weren't doing what everyone else was doing. But that just right there shows it, right? Like that shows that, like, it's like if you don't participate, then you are the outcast in the
Yeah,
situation.
and what if you weren't American?
Yeah.
I mean, you could have been for all anybody else knows, you could have been a resident alien or even somebody here on a business visa for a few years and you're not American. What the hell would you stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance for? You know what I mean? But I don't think people even think that. They just, there's so
No,
much
it was
group
just
push
odd
now.
that we weren't participating in that
Yeah.
at that time. And that's how we felt at that time. That was it. That was just, it wasn't to be disrespectful to anybody else. It was just
But
we were.
now patriotic has become a bad, patriotic's become, those have been dirty words to certain people.
I
Like,
know that's it's,
I became an American citizen in January of 2022, so I do consider myself a patriot because I had to swear to it, and that wasn't all that long ago, you know. But apparently that's a dirty word. Now I'm some awful communist, or not a communist. I'm a fascist. Sorry, and I'm racist because I want to say that I'm patriotic to America. I'm lost. It's like, how does that attach all these other things? I mean, I had to study for my, interview, and um, I had to swear that I would defend America and do this, that, and the other. So, I'm kind of feeling still pretty patriotic, but apparently, nope, that makes me a fascist and a racist.
I know it's like so you actually earned the citizenship. Like you had to do stuff to get it. We just have it.
Yes,
We just
right.
have it by birthright or whatever. So,
It took
like,
me 37 years.
so how did that work for you? How was that process? Like, like, were you here on a visa before that?
Originally, I came in on a visitor's visa, which was for 6 months, and I overstayed that. And then after that, I got married and was on a spousal visa with my husband. And then I had temporary residence, and then that became permanent residence. And then at that point, after 5 years after that, I could have applied for citizenship, but he wasn't going to help me do that at that point in time. And then when I left him, I didn't have the money to apply because you actually had to pay it in cash, and I didn't have the money, cash or check. And then Trump made it so you could pay by credit card. So that's when I was able to apply. But prior to that, I was green card holder since 2001.
Wow. See, to put it on I didn't even know. I didn't even know there was an expense to it or how expensive it is. I have no idea how any of that works. I didn't even know you couldn't put it on a credit card. Like, I know other people
And then
that.
I had to go, it's a long wait too from when you apply. Like, I applied in, was it maybe August of 2020, and I didn't get, and I've been eligible for a really long time, so they don't have to do much on me. Plus, I'd never left the country, so it wasn't like, they had to look that up. Um, yeah, and as I said, I've been here for a long time, been eligible for a long time. But yeah, still was that way. And then when I got called, I had to go for an oral examination, answer questions. They really weren't all that hard, but believe it or not, I put them on Twitter, and I think most of the American citizens by birth said they wouldn't have been able to pass the citizenship test, which is kind of scary because they really weren't all that hard. But I had to study because it was like 100 questions, and they were going to ask you, I think it was 7 of them, and you had to get, oh, they would ask you up to 10, but you had to get 7 right, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. I forgot already. But yeah, I had to go and I had to study them. And then they asked you a whole bunch of questions. Like they grilled me about my ex-husband, big time, because I didn't get anything in the divorce, especially. They're like, why did you get nothing in the divorce? Why did he get everything and you got nothing? Like that's not how to. And I'm like, I was a domestic violence victim, and I had to explain that. And then, oh yeah, I have rings on my ring fingers, so I was grilled about that. Like, why are you wearing rings on those fingers? Like, because if I was, harboring some secret husband, or yeah, I mean, it's a long process. And then
Wow.
I had to go get sworn in. And like up till the minute that they hand you that certificate, they keep telling you, you haven't made it yet. It was scary. I was like, oh my God, because they actually carted one woman out of there, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's like, please let me just get sworn in. I've come this far. Oh yeah, and I remember like this big guy said to me, you have to turn in all your green cards. So, and the card is like a little ID card, right? So I turned in mine. He goes, where was the other one that you were issued? And I'm like, what other one? And I'd forgotten that I had been issued one prior to that my ex-husband destroyed. And then I remembered and actually had that paperwork with me. So I'm like pulling in my file, I'm pulling out that and he's doing this in front of everybody, and I'm holding up the line. So, all these people are like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. So finally he said, we're going to look into this. We're going to look at this. I'm telling the truth, I swear. Like I even had like a letter from Obama or something to replace my, green card, because I'd had to get him involved in getting it. I'm like, I swear I didn't lie. But it's humiliating and it's scary, and you're just. And then when the guy went to do the Pledge of Allegiance, he missed a line, and we're all looking at each other like, oh, if he did it wrong, should we correct him? Because he's told us he's got big files on us, and he knows everything about us from birth until this moment. And we're all going, he missed a line. So finally, we were all afraid. And then finally somebody said, you missed a line, officer. What? You missed a line. Oh, okay. So then he did it again. And we're like,
Oh my gosh. So tense. Like I can imagine. How long was the process? How long were you there that day going through all all of that?
couple of hours maybe. And then they usually they have this beautiful ceremony, and you can usually bring friends, but of course this was still during COVID, so it was like the minute you get your certificate, check it, because if you lose this naturalization certificate, or you damage it, or there's anything wrong with it, once you walk out that door, you'll have to apply for another one, and it's $555 and will take 12 months. How much will it cost? $555. How long will it take? 12 months. How much does it cost? $555. How long will it take? 12 months. They made you just recite this like you're in the friggin' army or something. It was crazy. Yeah, and but then they're like, you've got to leave, and I'm like looking at that thing. I'm like, want to make sure there's no mistakes in it before I leave, because I hear this and I'm going, I don't have $555 more to replace it. Yeah, so it was. I don't know. I think I was there a couple of hours because they just make you line up all over the place. I mean, they're big into line up here. Okay, now line up here. They're just big into that, like really controlling you. The only time that I ever went to immigration that they weren't like that, and I was shocked, was when Obama was president. He actually revamped that they treated you nice, because all the years prior you've been treated really badly like cattle, and during his administration they actually, you made appointments, and I remember they called me ma'am, and I was like, I'm at immigration and they're calling me ma'am. Like, I can't believe this.
You
So
couldn't.
he
They couldn't say that now, though. They probably don't say "ma'am" now.
now they probably can't say it because they'd offend someone.
How different, huh? And how weird is it that so Obama made that immigration process, that he made them kinder to you, but that's also he built cages to put kids in at the border at the same time.
I know. And everybody thinks Trump was the only one who did that.
No,
No.
those cages are from Obama.
Yeah.
Those are Obama's cages. He built them.
Yes.
But he made it nicer for you to come in. I mean, like,
And everybody tried to spin it so that like Orange Man bad, and you know what I mean. You just said it yourself. Like, no, I thought that was Trump. No, that's just PR.
Yeah, I believed that. I believed Orange Man was absolutely terrible. I definitely
absolutely.
had.
It's not that he's not terrible at all, but he literally had a $1 trillion budget PR firm making sure everyone think Orange Man bad at all costs for every little stupid thing. It didn't matter what it really was. It was just how they could make it seem. And like, there's just an unbelievable amount of fucking effort into making you think Orange Man bad, even though he obviously already is. Of course, he wouldn't even be fucking running for president if he wasn't a piece of garbage in the first place. So that
and I mean, I don't like him as a person, but I thought he accomplished nothing. And somebody had to point out to me that he actually did some good things while he was president.
Oh yeah, no,
I mean,
definitely.
but you know, we can't acknowledge that he ever did anything, can we? That's not allowed.
Because Orange Man bad, right?
yeah,
exactly.
because there's Trump derangement syndrome.
Yes,
And
big
we're
time.
nonpartisan. We're just nonpartisan in it. We are like, we don't like any of them. So
I don't like any of them anymore either. But then, whatever he did that's a terrible thing, if Biden does it, or whatever if Melania wore an expensive pair of shoes, well, that's really bad. But if Jill Biden wears the same pair of shoes in a different color, oh, she's so stylish. I mean, these are such I'm so sick of the double standards. Yeah, and I'm not a huge Trump fan, but it's just these double standards all over the place.
Stork wants to know, what is the woke version of sir or ma'am?
I said I think it's just yo. It's just yo. It's come down to yo.
I mean, like, because if you go in, there's a difference. If you go up to like a group of ladies like that aren't worried about pronouns and stuff, you're like, hey guys, they're not going to freak out. But if you go to the wrong group of female presenting people and you say, hey guys, you're going to get...
You misgendered me.
Yeah.
And you know, it's so funny because like I grew up not saying hi guys, right? That wasn't something that we said in England or Ireland. I came here and it took me a few years to get used to saying you guys, and I finally was used to it. Now I'm not allowed to say it anymore.
I know, or we say dude, or
dude, or bro,
homie. Like we say all sorts of things that are like, you know, but it's not because it's become like non-gendered language, like, you know, just kind of a neutral, like, hey guys. And we had that as a neutral language. Now they're making it where it's no longer a neutral language. Like, I've never been misgendered in person by anybody. On purpose on Twitter, they try to pull that shit, and I'm like, really? Whatever. Like,
see, I have when I must have an aggressive way when I'm on text for customer support, customer service, because they always assume I'm a man. I don't know why. So I must come across aggressive or something where I'm like, where's my Amazon order? So I mean, I just get it all the time. It doesn't bother me. You know, and people call up and they ask to speak to Mr. because I guess they don't know what my name is. It doesn't bother me. I've heard it all my life. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. All right. And they're like, oh no, I need to speak to Mr. I'm like, no, that's me. You're talking to her. Oh, okay. I mean, this isn't the end of the world. And like my transsexuals, as they always call themselves, friends that I had or that I knew, they didn't care if somebody misgendered them. They weren't going to go off and, end their lives because somebody gave them the wrong pronoun. This is
No,
just ridiculous.
it's very it ties into that very like what we were talking about in the beginning, like kind of like that these kids don't have grit. They don't have it. They're this we are in like the participation trophy like timeline. And like the kids they don't have thick skin anymore. I was saying earlier, we went on a walk and talked to one of my neighbors, and like I didn't have like just like light conversation with him, like, yeah, the weather has been great, blah blah blah. No, I was like, I'm like, it's really crazy because kids nowadays are very different from how they were when like we were growing up, because he was about the same age. And it's astonishing to me because they're so thin. He's like, yeah, they're just, by the time the youngest one comes around, your third kid, and they don't have that grit anymore. Like the oldest kid always has to kind of like, we're the forgers, right? Like we kind of like forge the way for everyone else, like being an oldest kid, especially growing up in like the 80s and 90s. Like, I had to, but now it just seems like they get thinner skinned as the younger they are.
Yeah. And like, what do you guys think of this whole Jason Aldean controversy? Like,
oh my gosh. I listened to like some of it, and I'm like his song. I didn't listen to like the whole thing, and I'm like, but I like read the lyrics and stuff, and I'm like, it seems manufactured. It seems like
right.
like they're trying to make it something that it's not. And
it sounded like it was trying to be a Lil Kim song, right? Is that what you were talking about? That song?
No.
Yeah.
Different song?
The Jason Aldean song about like growing up in like
The
being
small
a
town.
little town and
Oh no, I didn't hear that one.
is that the song
They're
you're
trying
talking
to say he's trying to incite riots and racial violence, and I don't
because he
I
was
don't see
saying like
anything.
they don't allow those things in small towns. They don't allow you to beat up an old lady. Like it's literally like the lyrics. We'll have to.
It's like all stuff that you obviously wouldn't do. To
Yeah,
someone.
like and it's and people are implying that it's a racist song because they're making it about. He doesn't say anything about race in the song, but they are saying, oh well, then it must be about a black man. That means that you're applying that. You're applying that race.
I think it's in the video. In the video, it looks like he's referring to those BLM riots.
Yeah, there might be like
Love.
like there was some there was some like riots and stuff like that were in the video, like, but it was about
burning cities and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
To me, it just doesn't seem like it's what they're trying to make it out to be. You know what I mean? Like if an artist comes out and says, you're interpreting my song wrong, this isn't what it is, then how can people say no, but you really meant this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't write this song either. Somebody else wrote it and he just sang it. So it wasn't even the song he wrote. I assume he chose it for some reason. He felt something with it. But yeah, I don't know. There's some other songs by some other artists that I would say are a hell of a lot more racist than that. I don't get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we have to pay attention to like what are they distracting us with this? Are they trying to make us have more of a race war? Or you know what I mean? Are they trying to incite something? Because there's other people at play when it comes to these things, when they're saying these things, you know what I mean? Like someone else probably keyed these people up to say these things because like all of a sudden it's been out for 3 months and now it matters.
Right. Now it's a big deal.
Wait, what? Like, why are you pulling this card now? Like, that's what I kind of look at when I see this kind of stuff happen. I'm like, yeah, and now it's like it's got the Streisand effect, and everybody's like, I mean, it's one of the top songs that's being downloaded and streamed, and people that don't even like country music are going and doing that in support of what I call the cancel culture vultures, you know, because
Yeah, and last week it was the what's his name? Had remade Tracy Chapman's Fast Car, which was, from 1988.
Mhm.
And it was #1 in the country charts, and that was all the racket. Like, how can he have been #1 in the country charts and she never got any accolades for it? Excuse me, she won 3 Grammys for that song.
Yeah.
It was #1 all over the world. It was
The
on
huge
every
song.
radio station every day.
It's a
But
huge
she's,
song.
a black queer woman. Well, she's black lesbian. I don't know if she
Yeah.
identifies herself as queer, but we always knew she was black. We could see that. And we always knew she was a lesbian, and it didn't hurt. So what are you talking? It's like they come
There's a
up with
really
this.
good there's a good version of that song by Ryan Montbleu. You should check that out. He does it amazing. His voice is so similar to hers. They do this unbelievable version. Him and another guy playing guitar is really good.
yeah,
I think I
He's
do it
just
well.
fantastic anyway. Ryan Montbleu, excellent songwriter.
I think I do it well on keys too, but I got my first hater when I did it on Twitter. Somebody told me it sucked. So, all right.
oh, there's always going to be someone that's just
Oh,
going to,
yeah.
you know, say that something sucks or, you know,
That's
try.
that's my first hater. That's why I think I'm gonna like make $1 million soon, because like I've never had a hater before.
I
And
know,
you've got
right?
to have
When you got people hating on you, I know. I have I piss off the TRAs online like all the time, and then they try to like come at me, and I'm just like, I don't care. Like, you know, you can't. I'm sorry, you're not turning into a woman. That's it. That's it.
They can't
Um,
stand it when you just don't care, though. That's when they all run away with their tails between their legs, literally, because they can't stand it. You're supposed to get so upset and fight back with them, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude.
like, I don't, you know, like that's fine, whatever. You know, I say the same thing. Steve's laughing.
I'm laughing because she just said, "Yeah, whatever, dude," just like we do, like exactly the same accent. Yeah, whatever, dude. Which is totally California too. That's not even a New England thing.
I know.
But you know what they're gonna say. I mean, you know exactly what they're gonna. It's like you could write the words for them. They all
It's
say
like
the
they
same
have a
thing.
script, you know.
Yeah,
They have
they're
a
the
script.
same 5 or 6 expressions down to the letter, and like somebody gave them their programming instructions. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not even gonna bother. It's not worth like the energy it would take me to type out. You're full of it. Oh.
Yeah, Vicky says when I was taught the English language, the male pronouns were supposed to be used as inclusive to everyone. Yeah. But now they're changing it. I mean, like I've seen like over in the UK, there's bathrooms that say for anybody, for the women, but the males are just a male bathroom. Like, what is happening? Like,
Well, apparently that was just one on their lobby floor, and they did have 50 feet away from that a separate ladies only. But my question is, why did they change just the ladies into the gender neutral and not the men's room? Why did they leave the men? And I had somebody say, well, that's because it'd be much more difficult to change the urinals into cubicles than it would be to make pre-existing cubicles gender neutral. Okay, well, how about, like, since they were side by side, they just knock down the bloody wall in between them and make a gender neutral bathroom, and then leave all the ladies and men's. I mean, why do they have to make it look like they've left the men's alone and they've changed the ladies into the gender neutral? Don't people think of optics anymore? And come on, I'm sure a big hospital like that, which was a women's hospital, by the way, a women's hospital, sure they have to think of the optics.
Yeah, it doesn't sit well, and women didn't even have bathrooms, in the United States. We haven't had them that long. Like, like women haven't always had the rights that men have had. Like we
Well, that's why they used to say women couldn't leave the house because, well, we don't have bathrooms for them.
Yeah, I mean, so we need to, and then there's people that just want to keep poking that bear, and it's like, it used to be that the transsexuals that I always knew, they just blended into society, and that was the goal. And now we have self ID, and they get to just identify themselves, and then they also get to self-identify and change their birth certificates and all their records, so it doesn't even have a modified anything on there. There should be a modification. You shouldn't be able to say, if you go male to female, then you should have M to F or MF. You know what I mean? Like, there should be some sort of adaptation where it's not just switched completely over to being female. This changes everything. Because like, our insurance rates are different. How people are treated for medical care is different. Like, if you give certain medicines,
it's going to change crime rates, because now you're going to have women who commit rape. Right. You know how rare that was?
Yeah,
but now they identify as women.
But now, yeah, and so it's gonna confuse a whole lot of things. It's gonna confuse scholarships. I feel like it's ushering in this transhumanist agenda, like 1984. It's very Orwellian, and it's like, what are we gonna have to have? Is this why they're gonna bring chips in? We're gonna have chips on under our skin so that we can go in the appropriate bathroom. Is that what's gonna happen now? You know what I mean? So they can track us. And I said that on Twitter, and somebody's like, "Oh yeah, right, blah blah blah." And then somebody told me they're doing that at music at festivals already. They are doing this sort of thing already. So I didn't even know that until I said, I'm making this a prediction that this is going to happen. We are going to have to have IDs to be able to go in the right bathroom.
Microchips. Well, they've been microchipping old people for a long time. So why wouldn't they start microchipping the rest of us? I mean, it's just a matter of time.
It's just a matter of time before everybody gets their sublingual patch, and you can just, it'll be great. Speed up everything at the toll booth. When you're traveling and you get on the airplane, you don't even need a ticket anymore. You just beep, beep, beep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, then they can shut it off and be like, you can't eat. You're not eating.
Well, you better just keep your head down.
You have had too much bread this month. I'm sorry, ma'am. You were cutting off your bread. Right? Yeah, I mean, why not?
Sorry, you remember you made that Facebook post earlier today? You can't have your money.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. You're down like 5.
What did you say about Joe
delete
Biden?
that post, and then you can get your money out of the bank. Yeah. I mean, we don't even know what's coming, and I mean, I know all this sounds crazy and it sounds science fiction, but really,
arriving.
If I had told you, 10 years ago, and you were both adults 10 years ago, right? And I had told you that we would have these people who identified as transgender, not people who were transsexuals and wanted to identify as a man or a woman, but people that were like identified as transsexual that wanted to be different and had beards, wore skirt and heels, and were going to be coming into the ladies' room. What would you have told me? You would have told me, "Oh, come on, Sam, you've lost your marbles. That's never going to happen." And if I'd said, "Yes, it is. It's coming. And I was just in the future, and I'm coming back to tell you this." And if I told you there were going to be trans kids on puberty blockers and there were going to be non-binaries, you would just be sitting. Could you imagine 10 years ago, right? 2013, you would have been sitting there going, "You were off your rocker. You need to get on some medication." You would have told me to go see a psychiatrist.
Right? I mean, back when I'm trying to think of like what year it was. I think it was like 2008 or something. I met my friend that was transsexual, and she was rare to know somebody that was a transsexual. Like I was like, "Oh wow, this is so amazing that I got to meet you because you're such a rare person." So like it was such a rare thing. She was in danger. She had all of the surgeries and everything like that, and like went full on, like some of the transsexuals that we know, and did all of the surgeries, and but it was really dangerous then. it was really dangerous. They were still like really at risk of like, getting attacked by people that didn't accept them. Like we've come a far way.
I don't remember. See, I don't remember any danger because they, like, my friend really passed so well.
But this was before. This was
Okay.
before any of the surgeries. This was before, like, this was in the transition period beforehand. So like living as a male during the day for business and work and everything like that, and then doing the rest of it outside of that, but not really fully passing because they were really like not on the hormones yet, and like, you know, like they were in that therapy process of it,
Right.
and so in that very beginning part, it was dangerous for them at that time to be in certain areas because it was so rare, and because people were still getting like assaulted and stuff like that. Like it wasn't as widely accepted as it is now.
And yeah,
And I think
but no was homosexuality. You know, there was a time when homosexuals got attacked. We're forgetting that.
Oh, I remember.
Lesbians. Poor lesbian women would be walking down the street, butch lesbians, and they get attacked. You know. We've come so far, but now we're going backwards again.
Yeah,
because now people are angry at the whole, you know, everybody angry at lesbian. I've heard people say that I never thought would say it, that were really open, and they're like, I'm sick of the whole bloody lot of it. I mean, they're lumping in lesbians and gays who have absolutely nothing to do with this, and bisexual people with the, you know, with this movement, and it's sad. Especially they're lumping in, you know, probably the more butch lesbians and the more feminine males because they stand out more.
Yeah, and I feel like we're being eliminated. You know, like I remember, you know, getting hate, and like, you know, I remember hearing from, you know, family members, oh, well, what's next when we finally got gay marriage, you know, the equality, and you know, that was during the Obama period, and I remember hearing family members go, oh, well, what's next? They can marry animals. Like, I remember that hate. I remember that time period. I remember being in hiding about who I was and my sexuality because I lost friends. I got hate for it. I mean, I remember what that feels like. I'm not putting that on anybody who's trans. I'm not. If you stay away from kids and you aren't trying to invade women's rights, then I have absolutely no problem with anybody. Like, I just don't. But if, you know, if you are doing those things, then I will stand up. I will say no, that's not okay. I mean, there was a young girl I just saw. They did an interview with her on Fox News because, of course, you know, a lot of the MSN, like, you know, the MSNBCs and the more, like, you know, left or liberal, like, leaning, they're not covering these issues. So you're only getting a lot of it from the conservative side of view. But it was a young lady who was on a swim team at the YMCA, and she was changing in the locker room, and then she realized that the other person that was in there was a fully intact male, and she's a 16-year-old. And so, like, for her own personal protest, what she did was she put up signs saying, like, you know, like, she went to her coach and she went to, you know, like, to them, and they tried to act like it was hateful for her to say that. For her to say, like, I want female only spaces. This is a minor. She ended up getting kicked off her own swimming team. And they said that her words were hate because she wanted women's only spaces. That's not okay. That's a minor. A minor does not, like, that is not acceptable. We are failing these children as a society. We need to keep them safe. It's so, like, it's so disheartening.
And I'm sorry, women can be raped. That doesn't mean, I guess there are situations where men are raped, but it's far less by a woman. It's far less rare. I mean, it's almost, I mean, I do believe it can happen, but it's just really rare as opposed to how many times we can be raped. And people need to be aware of that. We're in danger.
Yeah.
And it's just, and the chances of us powering the average man are, I'm sure there are some women who could overpower a man, but they're not, it's not often, it's not common.
Not for, yeah, for the most part. For the most part, men can. I think the statistic is like they can kill 95% of women with their bare hands. So,
Wow. There you go.
I mean, we're just built differently. We really are. We're not. We there's a size difference. Our hearts are different.
Well, it's like they can get down to, what is it, 6 or 7% body fat, and that's still healthy. I mean, we'd be dead if we got down there. We can't. We have to have body fat. That's the way our bodies are built. And like for us, if we're down at, I think what the best, most fit female athletes have been 12 to 15%. I mean, that's not going to be the average woman, but that's some female who's in incredible shape. I mean, just think about it. We have more fat on our body. We have to. We have breasts. We have, curves.
And it takes so much time and dedication for them to become these prime athletes, right? And there's a lot of competition among the very small. Our sports are already smaller than the guys' sports. They never have been like, front and center. It's not, you know what I mean? There's it's always been that way. And we fought to even have those sports. And it's like,
and I mean, you can see the strength difference if you ever, I'm a big tennis fan, and if you ever watch like mixed doubles in tennis, where there's 2 women and 2 men playing, but you can see that and it's usually a woman and man versus a woman and man, you can see the huge difference in the strength that the men have. Even if they're playing with like probably the best female tennis players of all time, like the Williams sisters, who especially, they're really strong. But even they couldn't beat one of these male tennis players because there's just a difference. We just have different physiology. Why do we have to deny that?
Yeah, I don't know why that's something that's like so controversial. I never thought it would be. I never did. Like, I think that's what like made me like peak in all of this, was just being like, what do you mean? No, of course a man can't have a baby. Like that's what do you like? That's not even a thing. Like, and that's when I got.
And what about the breastfeeding? I think that has piqued a lot of people. That has really made a lot of people angry.
At being a mom, that's
and then when they actually have the nerve to say, it's so affirming for me. Well, if the doctor says it doesn't really hurt the baby, but it's so, it's like, see, you're
then pump it and pour it down a drain. Then you don't have to give it to the child. If get a fake doll that does it. Do something.
You don't have to take those drugs. Just they can suck on your boob if you really need that.
No.
You don't have to actually give them galactorrhea. There is no necessity for that. So yeah.
Yeah, no. I no. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies.
I know. It just really bothers, I think, most women, whether we had children or I didn't have children, but it's like
I breastfed. Like I did that with my daughter for 2.5 years, and I dedicated, myself.
And women are so careful; they don't even want to have a cup of coffee when they're breastfeeding.
Yeah,
or they might have one. I can have this cup of coffee in between here and here.
Yeah, and then you pump and dump if there's anything that you're worried about, like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't take any medications. It's a lot. It's a lot to go through, and it's very hard on your body, but it's the best thing for them, and that's why you do it.
You do it, yeah. Not to affirm yourself as a woman.
No, I didn't. Yeah, it wasn't a weird affirmation for, like, I never thought of that. Like, that's such a weird thing to me. Like, I didn't affirm anything, like.
It's so selfish, though. It's just so selfish to think, this is a baby. This isn't the most innocent of human beings. I mean, all children, I think, are innocent, but this is like a newborn baby. This baby is so innocent. How can you be so selfish that you don't put that baby ahead of everything? And I'm sorry, here I am, a woman who never had my own children, and I feel that way. So you're not affirming yourself as a woman because a woman would care.
This is like behind. I don't know why the chat or something on StreamYard is weird. With like, it's being weird. Like it won't scroll down. I can't see the most comment, like the most recent comments.
Weird.
Like it's not showing me any of the comments. Like it's stuck.
That's strange.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Well, oh my gosh, we've been going for almost close to like 3 hours almost. I can't believe it.
Wow.
I know.
Well, it's been fun.
Where can everyone find you besides oh my gosh, Spotify? I couldn't think of the name of it.
Probably the easiest way is Samsar Singer, all one word. Samsar, SAMSARA, and then SINGER.com. And from there, it links to all the different music platforms that I'm on, and my YouTube, and it links, to everything and anything. And
Awesome. Well,
if anybody would like to get into my little private community where I do, I recite my poetry, I give people early access to music. You can also get merchandise, and you'll get like advance notice of anything that I'm doing, any new music I'm putting out. You get to give me opinions on what you think a title of a song should be, or which artwork I should use. I have a Patreon, and you can also access that through my website. It's a private community. There's a 7-day free trial, and then there's a bunch of tiers depending on what you want. You can even be like an associate producer on my music if you want that. And there's different merchandise that you get at each level as well. But it starts out at like $3 a month, which is less than the average cup of coffee in most places. And it's greatly supportive for me, and I try to really give back as much as I can.
That's so awesome. Can I play one more of your songs on
Yeah,
our
sure.
way out? Which one
Sure.
should I play?
You choose.
Huh?
You should choose.
Invisible's been getting a lot of attention lately. That's the one that's getting all the reviews, so maybe we could play that one.
Okay. All right. Well, hang on right there, and after we're done with this, we'll say goodnight to everybody. So please hit the like button wherever you're watching this stream or listening to it. And thank you guys for tuning in. And there's always links below the show notes to find us in all kinds of ways. And please check out the online store, luckyburritoart.com.
There's the overlays in there.
Oh, wait, where is it?
Right at the bottom of the overlays.
Oh, yeah, here it is. Look at that. We have 20% off on the store right now through August 1st. My birthday's the 31st, so I wanted to do an extra coupon code. And so the code is #lucky if you want to save 20% off your order. We would really appreciate it. I'm trying to save up for a laptop.
Yeah.
And this is my birthday wish.
We're trying. So thank you. And that was awesome. Really nice to meet you, Sam.
Oh, she went.
Oh, good. Okay. Play the music.
I'm going to play the music.
I sing when you ask me to sing, but you don't ever let me in. These moments in my life, they come and go. Where they'll end up, I don't know. I'm so lost and all alone, and I don't have a clue where I'm going to. Will you give me a chance? Can you take just one glance? I know I'm broken, but I think I can heal. If you help me take away this pain, if you'll help me make a few of my dreams real. I'll sing when you ask me to. But maybe you had all my songs at your due. The sun rises and it sets on light, and I'm just singing out reflections of my moon. Will you give me a chance? Will you take just one glance? I know I'm broken, but I think I can heal. If you help me take away this pain, if you help me make a few of my dreams real, I lay awake and wonder, who did I become last summer? I'm not the person that I used to be. Hello, I think I just met me. Do you know that I'm real? Do you know that I feel? Or am I just invisible? I feel invisible. Will you give me a chance? Will you take just one glance? Do you know that I'm real? Do you know that I feel? Can you see me at all? Or am I just invisible?
Another one. Thank you for playing that.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting us play. So everybody, please go over to Spotify and play some of our music.
Hell yeah.
I don't know if you saw my kitty there. That was Ricky. She was making a ruckus here to get for me to. She's Siamese, and when they want attention, they want attention. So she was like yelling at me, and I had to go over, and so I'm like, "All right, then you're coming on camera."
You know,
You're gonna
right?
Yeah.
Steve, can you get Everett past Everett?
Come here, Everett.
Everett is.
She's
is
gonna be 17 on August 1st.
Wow.
So her birthday's the day after yours. So she's a great age, and yeah, she's pretty healthy. Oh look, hi, oh, you're so cute.
That is an old kitty, 17 years old. Wow.
I have one that lived to 22, so I'm still trying to beat that age.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Everett, no. See, he's trying to get into stuff too. He does this. Like when we're on stream, that's when he'll get into trouble. All right.
Well, yeah, she was being the same way. She was just yelling. Thank you so very much. It was lovely to speak to you both. I really appreciate you having me. And
Absolutely.
Steve, we need to collab, definitely.
Definitely.
Yes, stay right there.
Together.
And we're gonna say goodnight to the people, and we'll see you backstage in just 1 second.
Right,
Good night,
thank you.
everybody. Thank you.
Night.
Hit the like button. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.